Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto had the gamer ability and maxed out his charisma stat? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening. E-World swam back into focus as a symphony of pain. It wasn't the sharp, clean pain of a training mishap or a scraped knee. This was a deep, guttural ache that resonated in his bones, a throbbing chorus that sang from his ribs, his jaw, the back of his skull. A boot, heavy and unforgiving, had been the last thing he remembered. That, and the laughter. Cruel, sharp-edged laughter that cut deeper than any kunai. Naruto Uzumaki lay crumpled in the filth of a back alley, the stench of stale garbage and rainwater a cloying perfume. He tried to push himself up, but his arms trembled and refused to obey. A wet, sticky warmth matted his hair against the cobblestones. Blood, his blood. He blinked, and the grimy brick wall across from him flickered, text materializing in the air like a ghost. You have suffered critical damage. HP is at 3/100ths. Status effect. Concussion, severe. Int and Whis have been temporarily reduced by 50%. Status effect. Bleeding. -1 HP every 30 seconds. Status effect. Fear, lingering. All stats reduced by 10%. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them again. The text remained, shimmering with a faint, ethereal blue light that seemed utterly alien to the grimy world around him. He thought it was a hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by the beating. He'd hit his head hard. That had to be it. But the message felt real. It felt more real than the cobblestones digging into his cheek. Another wave of pain washed over him as he shifted, and a new box of text appeared. Due to experiencing extreme physical and emotional trauma, a dormant ability has been awakened. Welcome, player, to the game of life. Player, game. The words made no sense. This wasn't a game. This was his life. A miserable cycle of glares, whispers, and the occasional back owl. Lay beating when he was too slow or too trusting. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they were met with a strange sense of detachment. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it felt managed. Distant, as if he were observing it from behind a thick pane of glass. Passive skill activated. Gamer's Mind LVL, Max. Allows the user to calmly and logically think things through in any situation. Grants immunity to psychological status effects. Status effect. Fear, lingering, has been removed. The cold knot in his stomach didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. The trembling in his limbs subsided, replaced by a steady, analytical calm. He could still feel the pain, every searing pulse of it, but it was just data now. Information. He wasn't consumed by it. He could think. Okay, he thought, the word crisp and clear in his newfound mental silence. If this is real, what do I do? A thought, a simple question, bloomed in his mind. Status. As if in response, a larger screen materialized before him. A detailed ledger of his own existence. Name. Naruto Uzumaki. Level. 1/100ths Express. Title. The Demon Brat. HP. 1/100th Region. 1 HP per minute. CP. 50/50 Region. 5 CP per minute. STR. 5. VIT. 10. Dex. 7. Int. 4. Whis. 3. Cha. 1. LCK. Stat points. 0. He stared at the numbers, a grim understanding dawning on him. They were pathetic. A charisma of 1. It wasn't an insult. It was a diagnosis. It explained everything. The glares, the isolation, the immediate, unthinking hatred from people he'd never even met. His title, the Demon Brat, felt like a brand seared into his soul. The bleeding status was still active. He had to do something. He remembered seeing Sakura in class practice a basic medical jutsu, a faint green glow in her hands. He didn't know the technique, not really, but he focused on the memory. On the idea of it. He pushed what little chakra he could feel towards the gash on his head. Skill created. Basic First Aid LVL, 1. A rudimentary attempt to close a wound. Has a high chance of failure and minimal effect. Cost. 10 CP. His hand glowed with a sickly, pale green light for a moment before flickering out. The bleeding slowed, but didn't stop. The notification was blunt, but it was a start. He tried again, and again. On the third try, the bleeding finally stopped. Status effect. Bleeding has been removed. Basic first aid has leveled up. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet, using the wall for support. His legs shook, but they held. The world tilted, his concussion making the alley spin, but Gamer's mind kept the panic at bay. He looked at his HP, 15/100ths. The slow regeneration was helping. He needed to get home. The walk back to his apartment was a familiar gauntlet of hostility, but for the first time, Naruto saw it through a different lens. He could almost see the negative modifiers floating above the villagers' heads. A woman pulling her child away, her face a mask of contempt. A shopkeeper spitting on the ground as he passed. Each glare, each muttered curse, was a data point. It wasn't just random cruelty anymore, it was a system, and he was at the very bottom of it. His charisma of 1 was a beacon for their hate. He slammed the door to his tiny, derelict apartment and slid to the floor, the full weight of the day crashing down on him. The calm from Gamer's mind held, but a profound loneliness seeped through the cracks. This power, it didn't change the fact that he was alone. Or did it? He pulled up his status screen again. His eyes locked on one stat. Cha. 1. What if he could change it? What if he could make them see him? Not the monster they imagined. A new window popped into view, unbidden. Quest alert. A new beginning. Objective. Survive and grow stronger. Rewards. 500 express, 10 stat points. Bonus object. Tive. Make a genuine connection with another person. Bonus rewards. Plus 5 stat points, unique skill, observe. A quest, a goal, a tangible path forward, hope, a feeling he hadn't truly felt in years, sparked in his chest. Survive and grow stronger. That was something he could do. That was all he had ever tried to do. For the next week, Naruto was a ghost. He attended the ninja academy during the day, sitting in the back. Not saying a word, Iruka-sensei shot him worried glances, unused to his complete silence. Usually, Naruto was a volcano of disruption, desperate for any kind of attention, good or bad. Now, he was just watching, observing. His new power gave him a quest for attending class, daily quest, attend the academy. The reward was a paltry 10 express, but it was something. At night, he didn't pull pranks. He pushed his body to its limits. He ran until his lungs burned and his HP flickered dangerously low. He did push-ups until his arms gave out. Due to rigorous physical activity, STR has increased by 1. Due to pushing your body to its limits, VIT has increased by 1. The notifications were an intoxicating drug. For the first time in his life, his effort yielded a direct, measurable result. He wasn't just flailing in the dark anymore. He was building himself, point by point. After a week of this grueling routine, a chime echoed in his mind. Level up. You are now level 2. You have gained 5 stat points. He had done it. He'd survived. He hadn't completed the main quest yet, but he had leveled up. The feeling was more satisfying than a full bowl of Ichiraku ramen. He sat on his lumpy bed, staring at the allocation screen. 5 points. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He could put them in strength, become a better fighter. Or dexterity, to be faster, more agile. His eyes kept drifting back to that damning number. Cha. 1. The bonus objective of the quest was to make a genuine connection. He wouldn't do that with a higher strength stat. He would just be a stronger demon brat. A more dangerous pariah. He had to change how people saw him. It was a terrifying gamble. What if it didn't work? What if he wasted these precious points? Taking a deep breath, he focused his intent. Put all 5 points into charisma. Are you sure? Confirm allocation. 5 points to Cha. He confirmed. Cha. 1 to 6. He didn't feel any different. There was no sudden surge of power, no golden aura. He looked in the cracked mirror on his wall. It was the same face. Whiskered cheeks, unruly blonde hair, blue eyes filled with a familiar loneliness. He felt a pang of disappointment. Maybe it was all a lie. The next day, he decided to test it. He walked down the main street of Konoha, his usual route, bracing for the inevitable wave of animosity. The first person he saw was a baker, who always made a point of scowling at him. The man looked up, his eyes narrowed by habit, but then his expression faltered. The scowl softened into something closer to neutral indifference. The man grunted, a noncommittal sound, and turned back to his wares. It wasn't a smile, it wasn't a friendly greeting, but it wasn't hatred. Naruto's heart hammered in his chest. It was a tiny change, almost imperceptible, but it was there. He continued his walk, a new energy in his step. A woman who usually clutched her purse tighter as he passed simply gave him a wide berth. A group of kids who normally threw stones just stopped their game to stare for a moment before resuming their play. The oppressive weight of universal loathing had lessened, even if only by a fraction. He felt a grin stretch across his face, the first genuine, happy grin he'd had in a long, long time. It worked. His thoughts turned to the quest reward. 10 stat points. That was double what he had just earned. He could raise his charisma to 16. The thought was staggering. But how to complete the quest? He needed to grow stronger, and the only person who seemed to hold the keys to that was the old man, the third Hokage. Fear, or what was left of it, coiled in his stomach. He was just an academy student, a known prankster. The Hokage was the most powerful man in the village. Walking into his office to make demands was suicide. But the calm of Gamer's mind assessed the situation. What was the worst that could happen? The old man would say no. He was already at the bottom. The only way was up. He squared his shoulders and marched towards the Hokage tower, his new plan solidifying with every step. The secretary at the front desk was a stern-faced woman who looked at him as if he were something she'd scraped off her shoe. "The Hokage is a very busy man," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "He doesn't have time for you." Old Naruto would have yelled, thrown a tantrum, maybe even tried to sneak past her. But the gamer's mind was in control. He looked at the woman, offered a small, disarming smile, and dipped his head respectfully. "I understand completely," he said, his voice even and polite. "But I have some important information about the academy that I believe he would want to hear directly. It concerns the village's security." It was a bluff, but a calculated one. Using a word like security was bound to get attention. His charisma of 6 wasn't mind control, but it seemed to be enough to make her pause. She saw not the usual disruptive brat, but a serious-looking child. Her brow furrowed. "Wait here," she snapped, before disappearing through the large double doors. A few minutes later, she returned, her expression one of utter disbelief. "The Hokage will see you." Naruto walked into the circular office, the scent of old paper and pipe smoke filling the air. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sat behind a mountain of paperwork, his kind, wrinkled face etched with fatigue. He looked up, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Naruto, what's this about security at the academy?" Naruto bowed his head, a gesture of respect he had never offered before. "Hokage-sama, thank you for seeing me. I apologize for the deception. There is no immediate security threat." Hiruzen's eyebrows rose. He leaned back in his chair, setting his pipe down. "I see. And to what do I owe this creative intrusion?" This was it, the moment of truth. Naruto took a breath, marshaling his thoughts. "I came to ask for your help," Naruto began, keeping his voice steady. "I want to be a great ninja. I want to be the greatest ninja this village has ever seen. I want to become Hokage." Hiruzen smiled, a familiar, grandfatherly expression. "A noble ambition, Naruto. One you have always held. But I can't do it like this," Naruto pressed on, his gaze unwavering. "The academy, they don't teach me. Iruka-sensei tries, but the other instructors, they pass me over. They give me faulty equipment. They teach me the wrong forms for taijutsu. When I ask questions, they ignore me. I am being set up to fail." He laid the facts out plainly, without the usual whining or yelling. He was presenting a case, not throwing a tantrum. He could see the shift in the Hokage's expression, the gentle amusement fading, replaced by a thoughtful frown. "I know what the villagers say about me," Naruto continued, his voice dropping slightly. "I know they hate me. I don't know why, but I know they do. And I know that hatred has bled into the academy. I will never become a genin, let alone Hokage, if I am being actively sabotaged by my own teachers. He let the words hang in the air. Hiruzen picked up his pipe, his eyes distant. These are serious accusations, Naruto. They are the truth, Naruto said simply. All I ask for is a chance. A fair chance. Access to the library for jutsu theory. A proper training ground where I won't be chased away. And maybe, a different apartment. The one I have now. The landlord shut off the hot water again. He hadn't planned on adding that last part, but it slipped out, a raw piece of his miserable reality. For the first time, he saw a flicker of genuine anger in the old man's eyes. Not at him, but for him. Hiruzen was silent for a long time, studying the boy before him. This was not the Naruto he knew. The loud, obnoxious, desperate child was gone. In his place stood a young boy with a fire in his eyes. But it was a controlled burn now, focused and articulate. There was a newfound maturity, a startling clarity in his gaze. Very well, Naruto, Hiruzen said finally, his voice firm. He scribbled a note on a piece of paper, stamping it with his official seal. Give this to the front desk at the ninja library. It will grant you restricted access. For now, you are permitted to study materials up to AC rank. He then pulled out a key from his desk drawer. This is for apartment 301 in the West District. It's a bit small, but it is clean, secure, and the utilities are covered by a stipend I will be arranging for you. Your things will be moved tomorrow. Naruto's eyes widened. He had expected to be dismissed, maybe with a platitude and a pat on the head. He had not expected this. As for your training, Hiruzen continued, his gaze sharp, I will be having a word with the academy instructors. I will also arrange for you to have access to training ground 3 in the mornings. It is usually unoccupied then. I expect you to use it wisely. Naruto could only stare, speechless. He felt a lump form in his throat. It was more than he could have ever hoped for. Thank you, Hokage-sama, he whispered. The words thick with emotion. Thank you. The will of fire resides in all of us, Naruto, Hiruzen said, his voice softening. It is my duty to ensure it is not extinguished unfairly. Now, off you go. I have a mountain of paperwork that is threatening to bury me alive. Naruto bowed deeply and left the office, his mind reeling. As the doors closed behind him, a familiar blue screen appeared. Quest completed. A new beginning. Objective. Survive and grow stronger. Complete. Rewards. 500 express, 10 stat points. Bonus objective. Make a genuine connection with another person. Complete. Bonus rewards. Plus 5 stat points, unique skill, observe. You have leveled up. You have lettuce leveled up. You are now level 4. You have gained 10 stat points. Total stat points to allocate, 25. His connection with the Hokage, the system had registered it as genuine. The thought sent a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the game mechanics. He practically floated out of the Hokage Tower, clutching the key and the library pass like priceless treasures. He now had 25 stat points. The temptation to pour them all into charisma again was immense. But he also remembered the Hokage's words, I expect you to use it wisely. He needed to be stronger, not just more likable. He allocated the points with a new sense of purpose. 10 points into Cha, total, 16. 5 points into Int, total, 9. 5 points into Whis, total, 8. 5 points into Dex, total, 12. His intelligence and wisdom were laughably low, and he'd need them to understand the jutsu scrolls in the library. Dexterity would make him faster. But charisma was still his priority. It was the key that had unlocked this new door. He also had a new skill. He focused on it, and a description appeared. Observe LVL. 1. A skill to see information about a target. Provides general information at low levels. The higher the level, the more detailed the information revealed. He immediately tried it out on a passing chunin. Name. Kenji Tanaka. Level. 12. Title. Konoha Chunin. It was simple, but incredibly useful. Information was power. The next morning, Naruto woke up not on his lumpy, stained mattress, but in a clean, soft bed. Sunlight streamed through a large window that wasn't cracked. The air didn't smell of mildew and neglect. He had his own small kitchen, a proper shower with blessedly hot water, and a small balcony overlooking a quiet street. It was a palace. He didn't waste a moment. He ate a proper breakfast of eggs and toast, real food, not instant ramen, and headed straight for Training Ground 3. It was a simple clearing with a few training posts and a small stream running along one side. And it was all his. He started with the academy basics, the things he had always struggled with. The clone jutsu. He had failed the graduation exam twice because of this single technique. The instructors had always told him he had poor chakra control. He pulled up his new status screen. He now had a much larger chakra pool. Thanks to his increased vitality and leveling up. He focused, molding the chakra exactly as the textbook described. Skill created. Clone Jutsu LVL 1. Creates an illusory copy of the user. A basic E-rank technique. Cost. 5 CP. He performed the hand signs, and with a puff of smoke, a clone appeared next to him. It was a pale, sickly thing, barely holding its form. And it collapsed into a puddle of smoke after a few seconds. A failure. But the system registered it as a success, a created skill. Clone Jutsu has leveled up. He tried again, and again, and again. Each time, a notification popped up. The clone would last a second longer, look a little more solid. He wasn't just blindly throwing chakra at the problem anymore. Gamer's mind allowed him to analyze what he was doing wrong. To feel the flow of his chakra and correct it. The system provided instant feedback. Within an hour, he could create 3 stable, albeit immobile, clones at once. Clone Jutsu has reached level 10. He grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. This power was a cheat code. A wonderful, glorious cheat code. Later that afternoon, he went to the library. The librarian, a D.F.F. errant one from the usual stern-faced woman, looked at his pass, raised an eyebrow at the Hokage's seal, and waved him through without a word. The hushed silence of the library was a stark contrast to the noise of the village. Naruto walked through aisles stacked high with scrolls, the smell of old paper a comforting scent. He used his newfound int and WIS. He didn't just grab a random scroll. He started with the basics. The fundamentals of chakra control, an introduction to the 5 natures, and a history book, the founding of Konoha. He needed to understand the system he was a part of, not just exploit it. As he was sitting at a secluded table, engrossed in a text about chakra molding exercises, a small, quiet presence entered his awareness. He looked up and saw a girl with dark blue hair and pale lavender eyes hovering near the bookshelf. She was clutching a thick medical text to her chest, her fingers trembling slightly. It was Hinata Hyuga, the timid girl from his class WH. Always seemed to be looking at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. As soon as their eyes met, she flinched, a deep blush coloring her cheeks. She looked like a frightened rabbit, ready to bolt. Old Naruto would have ignored her, or maybe said something loud and awkward, scaring her off. But new Naruto saw the situation differently. He used observe. Name: Hinata Hyuga. Level: 3. Title: Hyuga Heiress. Disposition: terrified. Infatuated. Infatuated. The word threw him for a loop. Why would anyone, especially the heiress of a noble clan, be infatuated with him? He decided to test his charisma. He didn't stand up or make any sudden movements. He just offered a small, gentle smile. "Hi, Hinata," he said, his voice soft. "That's a pretty advanced book you've got there." His simple greeting seemed to shatter her composure. She stammered, unable to form a coherent word, her blush deepening to a crimson red. She looked at the floor, at the ceiling, anywhere but at him. He realized he needed to ease the pressure. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "You can sit here if you want. It's quiet." She hesitated for a long moment, then gave a tiny, jerky nod. She practically drifted to the chair and sat down, placing her book on the table with exaggerated care. The silence that followed was thick with her nervousness. He decided to try a different approach. He didn't ask her a question, which would require an answer. He just made a statement. "It's nice in here," he said, looking around the library. "Peaceful. It's hard to find a quiet place in the village sometimes." She risked a glance at him, then gave another minuscule nod. "Progress." He turned back to his own book, giving her space. He didn't try to force a conversation. He just let her be. He could feel her slowly relax, the tension in her shoulders easing. After about 10 minutes, he heard a small, almost inaudible sound. And Naruto-kun. He looked up, keeping his expression open and friendly. Yeah, that book, she said, pointing a trembling finger at his chakra control scroll. I have some notes on those exercises. My father, he makes me practice them every day. They might help. It was the most she had ever said to him. He felt a notification ping in the back of his mind, but he ignored it, focusing entirely on her. Really? That would be amazing, Hinata. I'd really appreciate that. The sincerity in his voice seemed to give her a small measure of courage. Slowly, she pulled a small notebook from her pouch and pushed it across the table. It was filled with neat, precise handwriting and detailed diagrams. He looked through it, genuinely impressed. Wow, Hinata, this is incredible. It makes so much more sense than the textbook. You're amazing. A small squeak escaped her lips, and she looked like she might faint, but he also saw something else in her eyes, a flicker of pride. Due to a genuine, positive interaction, your relationship with Hinata Hyuga has increased. Hinata Hyuga's disposition. Nervous, happy. They sat there for the rest of the afternoon, not talking much, but in a comfortable silence. It was a new experience for Naruto. He had never had a companion before, someone who chose to be near him without wanting to hurt him. He realized that this, more than the new apartment or the training ground, was the real reward. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the library windows, Hinata gathered her things. I have to go, she whispered. Okay, Naruto said with another smile. Hey, thanks again for this, Hinata. You really saved me. She shook her head quickly. It was nothing. No, it was something, he insisted gently. Maybe, I'll see you at the training grounds sometime. I'm at number 3 in the mornings now. A flicker of surprise and something like hope crossed her face. Oh okay. She practically fled from the library after that, but Naruto was left with a feeling of profound warmth. He had made a connection. A real one. He walked out of the library and into the evening air, the village lights beginning to twinkle to life. He looked up at the Hokage monument, the stone faces of the past leaders carved into the mountain. Watching over the village, his goal felt closer now, more real than ever before. He still had a long way to go. His stats were still pitifully low compared to a real ninja. There was still a deep, dark reason for the village's hatred that he didn't understand. And somewhere out in the world, enemies he couldn't yet imagine were moving in the shadows. But for the first time, Naruto Uzumaki felt like he was no longer a victim of his own story. He was the one writing it. The game was on, and he was ready to play. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Art of Influence. The sun had barely begun to bleed its pale, watery light over the horizon when Naruto's feet hit the damp earth of Training Ground 3. The air was cool and carried the scent of pine and wet soil. This had become his sanctuary, his laboratory. The rhythmic thud of his fists against a worn training post was the new morning bell for his life. Each impact sent a jolt up his arms, and with each jolt, a familiar blue box would flicker at the edge of his vision. Due to repetitive, focused strikes, the skill Taijutsu Academy Style has been created. Taijutsu Academy Style LVL, 2-3. He ignored it. The notifications were a constant, comforting hum in the background of his thoughts now, a steady confirmation that his efforts mattered. He moved through the Katazuruka sensei had taught them, but where before he had been sloppy. A whirlwind of unfocused energy, now he was precise. Gamer's mind allowed him to break down every movement, every shift in weight, every extension of a limb. He analyzed it, refined it, and repeated it until the notification chimed. After an hour of taijutsu, he moved on to chakra control. He had read the scroll from the library cover to cover, his enhanced int and wis, making the dense theory surprisingly digestible. The first, most fundamental exercise was leaf sticking. He placed a leaf on his forehead, channeled a thread of chakra, and felt it flutter to the ground. He tried again. It fell. And again. Skill created. Chakra control LVL. 1. The ability to manipulate the energy within your body. The foundation of all ninjutsu. Higher levels reduce chakra costs and increase jutsu potency. This was the grind, the unglamorous, repetitive work that separated the dreamers from the achievers. But for Naruto, it was a revelation. He could feel the difference with each attempt. The flow of chakra, once a raging river he could barely contain, was becoming a current he could guide. The leaf trembled, stayed for a second, then 2, then 5. Chakra control has leveled up. A rustle in the trees nearby broke his concentration. He spun around, his hand instinctively dropping to the kunai pouch on his thigh. A flash of dark blue hair and pale eyes peeked out from behind a thick oak tree. It was Hinata. She looked even more terrified out here than she had in the library. He relaxed his stance immediately, offering the same gentle smile that had worked before. "Morning, Hinata." She flinched, startled by his voice, and took a hesitant step into the clearing. She was dressed in her usual lavender and cream training gear, and she clutched a small scroll in her hands as if it were a shield. Naruto-kun," she stammered, her gaze fixed on a patch of moss by his feet. I saw you were here. I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting," he said, his tone easy and welcoming. His charisma of 16 was a passive aura now, smoothing the sharp edges of his personality and projecting a sense of warmth and sincerity. "I was just working on chakra control. It's kicking my butt." He purposefully admitted his struggle, a simple act of vulnerability that instantly made him less intimidating. He saw her shoulders relax by a fraction. I'm not very good at it either," she confessed in a near whisper. He used observe. Name: Hinata Hyuga. Level: 3. Title: Hyuga Heiress. Disposition: anxious, hopeful. Thoughts: he isn't angry that I'm here. He smiled. He's like the sun. The brief insight into her thoughts was staggering. It felt like a superpower all on its own. He realized the immense responsibility that came with this ability. He could easily manipulate people. But the thought left a sour taste in his mouth. The quest had rewarded him for a genuine connection. That was the path he would follow. "I was about to try tree walking," he said, gesturing to the massive trees ringing the clearing. "Want to give it a shot with me? The book says it's the best way to improve." Her eyes widened in panic. "Oh, I can't. My father, I've tried. I always fall." "Me too," he said with a laugh. "I'll probably fall 100 times. We can be bad at it together. It'll be more fun than falling alone." The idea of sharing her failure, rather than being judged for it, seemed to disarm her completely. She looked up at him, her pale eyes meeting his for a brief moment, and gave a hesitant nod. Naruto walked to the base of the nearest tree. He remembered the theory from the scroll: channel a precise, constant amount of chakra to the soles of the feet to create an adhesive force. Too little, and you slip. Too much, and you blast yourself off the tree. He took a running start, focused, and slammed his foot against the trunk. He stuck, for a glorious half-second, before his control wavered and he tumbled backward onto the grass. Due to a spectacular failure, you have gained a deeper understanding of the necessary chakra application. Chakra control has leveled up. He sat up, laughing at the notification. "See, first fall out of the way." Hinata watched him, a tiny ghost of a smile on her lips. She approached another tree, took a deep breath, and placed her foot against the bark. She took one step, then two, her face a mask of intense concentration. Before she let out a small yelp and fell, landing softly on the ground. Naruto was at her side in an instant. "You okay?" She nodded, her face flushed with embarrassment. I pushed too much chakra. You got 2 steps farther than me on your first try," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "That's amazing, Hinata." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She was used to scorn. To her father's disappointed sighs. Praise was a foreign language. It was not, she mumbled. "Yes, it was," he insisted, his gaze firm but kind. "You have way better instincts for this than I do. Your problem isn't your control, it's your confidence. You expect to fall, so you do." He stood up and offered her a hand. Her fingers were trembling as she took it, her skin soft and cool against his. He helped her to her feet, his touch lingering for a moment. "Try it again," he urged. "But this time, don't look down. Look up. Look at where you're going, not where you might fall." She stared at him, then at the tree, a war of doubt and hope playing out in her eyes. She took another deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, and then ran at the tree. 1 step, 2, 3, 4, she wobbled, her arms pinwheeling, but she didn't fall. She took another step, then another, until she was standing a full 10 feet up the trunk, perpendicular to the ground. She looked down at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of terror and utter triumph. A real, radiant smile broke across her face. I'm doing it, she breathed. You're doing it, he cheered from the ground, his own heart swelling with pride for her. Through genuine encouragement, you have inspired an ally. A new skill has been created. Leadership Rudimentary LVL 1. Your relationship with Hinata Hyuga has significantly increased. Hinata Hyuga's disposition. Elated, grateful. Her control broke then, and she slid down the trunk, but he was there to catch her. It was awkward, a tangle of limbs, but he kept her from falling hard. For a moment, they were close, her face just inches from his. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart. She was blushing a furious scarlet, but she didn't pull away immediately. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she whispered, her voice full of an emotion he couldn't quite decipher. You did all the work, he said softly, helping her find her footing. I just reminded you that you could. They spent the rest of the morning training together, their initial awkwardness melting away into a comfortable companionship. They raced up trees, offered each other tips, and laughed at their frequent falls. By the time they had to leave for the academy, Naruto could run halfway up a trunk before losing his grip, and Hinata could walk all the way to the top and back down again. She was a natural, just as he'd suspected. She just needed someone to believe in her. Walking into the academy felt different that day. He wasn't invisible anymore. A few of the other students, the ones who weren't in the popular cliques, nodded at him. It was a small gesture, but it was a world away from the open hostility he was used to. His charisma was slowly, subtly rewriting the social code around him. The class was a lecture on the history of the First Shinobi World War. Naruto actually listened, his and was allowing him to absorb and retain the information. He could see the strategic blunders, the political motivations, the sheer cost of war, in a way he never could have before. The afternoon session was practical jutsu. Today's instructor was Mizuki, a man with a friendly smile that never quite reached his eyes. Naruto had always disliked him on instinct. Now, he knew why. He used observe as Mizuki walked into the room. Name: Mizuki. Level: 15. Title: Konoha Chunin, Academy Instructor. Disposition: deceptive, malicious towards Naruto Uzumaki. Thoughts: time to put the demon brat in his place. Lord Danzo will be pleased. The name, Danzo, snagged in his mind. He didn't know who that was. But the malice directed at him was a blaring red alarm. This wasn't just a simple dislike, it was a deep-seated, active animosity. And it was connected to someone important. All right, class, Mizuki said, his voice slick and charming. Today, we're going to review a simple but crucial skill, the transformation jutsu. A ninja must be a master of deception. He called on several students. Sakura, as expected, performed a perfect replica of Iruka-sensei. Sasuke transformed into a flawless copy of the third Hokage. When it was Naruto's turn, a smirk touched Mizuki's lips. Naruto, let's see what you've got. Naruto walked to the front of the class. He knew what Mizuki was planning. He would perform the jutsu, and Mizuki would find some imaginary flaw, some tiny mistake, and use it to humiliate him in front of everyone. The old Naruto would have fallen for it, getting angry and sloppy, proving him right. Not this time. He performed the hand signs, molded his chakra, and in a puff of smoke, transformed into a perfect replica of Mizuki. He didn't just copy his appearance, he copied his posture, his slightly arrogant stance, the fake smile plastered on his face. The class gasped. It was perfect. Mizuki's smile tightened. Sloppy. The color of the eyes is a shade too light. Your chakra control is still atrocious. A failure. Whispers broke out among the students. They had all seen it. The transformation was flawless. They looked from Naruto to Mizuki, confusion on their faces. Naruto didn't get angry. He didn't shout. He simply let the transformation drop and looked Mizuki directly in the eye. His own gaze clear and steady. Could you demonstrate the correct shade, Mizuki-sensei? He asked, his voice calm and respectful, so that I, and the rest of the class, can learn from a master. The challenge was subtle, but devastating. He wasn't calling him a liar. He was asking for instruction, forcing Mizuki into a corner. To refuse would be to admit he was making it up. To accept would be to perform a jutsu that would look identical to the one he had just failed. He had turned Mizuki's authority against him. Mizuki's face paled, then flushed with anger. He saw the doubt in the other students' eyes. He had lost control of the classroom. Detention. Naruto, he snarled. For insolence. For asking a question. Naruto replied, his voice still even. He turned to the rest of the class. Is this what we are to expect? To be punished for trying to learn? A few students shifted uncomfortably. Kiba, usually one of Naruto's tormentors, actually looked thoughtful. Shikamaru, who had been asleep, opened one eye and grunted in what sounded like approval. He wasn't just defending himself, he was defending all of them. His charisma was turning this from a personal conflict into a matter of principle. Before Mizuki could explode, the door slid open and Iruka walked in. Mizuki, is there a problem here? Mizuki composed himself, the fake smile returning. No problem at all, Iruka. Just dealing with a disruptive student. Iruka looked at Naruto, then at the tense faces of the other students. He frowned. My apologies, class. I need to borrow Naruto for a moment. Hokage's orders. It was a lie, but it was a lifeline. Iruka led Naruto out into the hallway. What happened? Iruka asked, his voice low. Naruto explained the situation simply, factually, without exaggeration. Iruka's frown deepened. I believe you, Naruto, he said finally. I've had my suspicions about Mizuki for a while. Be careful around him. And, that was a clever way to handle that. You've changed. He put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, and for the first time, the touch felt like one of genuine pride, not pity. Relationship with Iruka Umino has increased. After school, Naruto found a quiet spot by the river to eat his lunch. He was thinking about Mizuki, about the name, Danzo, when a shadow fell over him. He looked up to see Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke's dark eyes were narrowed. His usual expression of bored superiority replaced by one of intense scrutiny. He had seen the exchange in the classroom. He had seen Naruto's perfect transformation. He had seen the way Naruto had outmaneuvered a Chunin instructor without throwing a single punch. You, Sasuke said. It wasn't a question. Me, Naruto replied, taking a bite of his rice ball. That jutsu wasn't sloppy. I know. You've been holding back, Sasuke stated, his voice laced with accusation. All this time, acting like a clown. Why? Naruto finished his rice ball before answering. He looked at Sasuke, really looked at him, and used observe. Name: Sasuke Uchiha. Level: 5. Title: Last of the Uchiha. Disposition: suspicious, arrogant, lonely. Thoughts: how did the dead last get so good? Is this another trick? I have to be the best. I have to beat him. Is this loser now a rival? The loneliness in his disposition hit Naruto harder than he expected. Beneath the arrogance and the anger, Sasuke was just a boy who had lost everything. Desperately trying to claw his way to a strength he thought would protect him. Naruto understood that feeling all too well. I wasn't holding back, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm. I was weak, and I got tired of being weak. So I started training. Sasuke's eyes narrowed further. Don't lie to me. I'm not, Naruto said. He stood up, brushing the grass off his pants. He was a few inches shorter than Sasuke, but he didn't look up at him. He met his gaze head on. You think you're the only one who wants to get stronger. You think you have a monopoly on having a crappy life. The words hit their mark. Sasuke flinched, a flicker of raw pain in his eyes before it was buried again under a layer of ice. You know nothing about my life, Sasuke hissed. I know what it's like to be alone. Naruto shot back, and I know that all the brooding in the world doesn't make you stronger. Only work does. An electric tension crackled between them. The air grew thick. Sasuke's fists were clenched at his sides. Spar with me, Sasuke demanded. Right now. Prove it. Naruto grinned. It was a sharp, feral thing. Okay. They moved to a clear, flat patch of ground. There were no rules, no referee. Just the two of them. Sasuke shot forward, his movements a fluid, graceful blur that spoke of years of elite training. He was faster than Naruto, his kicks and punches precise and powerful. But Naruto had his system. He could see the attacks coming, and his improved dexterity allowed him to dodge, to weave, to parry. He wasn't as polished, but he was unpredictable. He threw himself into the fight. His academy-style taijutsu bolstered by a brawler's instinct and an inhuman tolerance for pain. You have taken 5 damage. You have taken 8 damage. He took hits, his HP dipping, but he gave as good as he got. He managed to land a solid punch on Sasuke's jaw, sending the Uchiha stumbling back in shock. No one touched Sasuke. No one even came close. The fight was a whirlwind of motion. Sasuke was all crisp, clean lines, the Uchiha interceptor style in its infancy. Naruto was a storm, all chaotic energy and surprising angles. Sasuke was more skilled, but Naruto was more durable. His higher VIT and steady HP regeneration allowed him to absorb punishment that would have dropped any other academy student. Finally, Sasuke jumped back, breathing heavily, a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. A single tomo had appeared in his right eye, the Sharingan awakened by the intensity of the fight. "What are you?" Sasuke breathed, his Sharingan spinning as it tried to read Naruto's movements. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto said, his own chest heaving. "And I'm going to be Hokage." He charged in again, but this time Sasuke was ready. The Sharingan saw through his feint. Sasuke ducked under a punch and swept Naruto's legs out from under him. Naruto hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. Sasuke was on him in an instant, a kunai pressed against his throat. The fight was over, but as Sasuke stared down at him, he didn't see fear in Naruto's eyes. He saw defiance. He saw a fire that matched his own. "Good fight," Naruto rasped, a grin on his face. Sasuke stared at him for a long moment, the kunai unwavering. Then, he stood up and put the blade away. He offered a hand to Naruto. Naruto took it, and Sasuke pulled him to his feet. A rivalry has been acknowledged. Relationship with Sasuke Uchiha has changed from hostile to rival. "You're not a loser," Sasuke said, his voice low. He turned and walked away without another word. Naruto watched him go, his body aching. His HP in the red, but a feeling of victory settling in his chest. He hadn't won the fight, but he had won something far more important, respect. In the dark, Window's office deep beneath the foundations of Konoha, Danzo Shimura watched the image in a crystal ball swirl and resolve. The orb, linked to one of his loyal root operatives, showed a clear picture of the spar between the Uchiha survivor and the Jinchuriki. "He's changing," Danzo said, his voice a dry rustle of old leaves. His one visible eye was narrowed in thought. "His progress is unnatural." Hiruzen Sarutobi stood across the room, his hands clasped behind his back. The Hokage's expression was unreadable. He is a boy of surprising spirit. He has simply found his motivation. Motivation does not grant flawless jutsu overnight. Danzo countered. Mizuki's report was quite clear. The boy humiliated him with logic and garnered the sympathy of his classmates. His influence is growing. This is dangerous, Hiruzen. The vessel must be kept weak, isolated. An empty tool for the village to wield. "He is not a tool," Hiruzen said, his voice laced with a rare edge of steel. "He is a shinobi of Konoha. He is Minato's legacy. My only regret is that I honored his father's wish to let him live as a hero's son, yet allowed the village to treat him as a pariah. I am correcting that mistake. A mistake you will come to regret," Danzo warned. "The seal is weakening. His emotions are the key. Allowing him to form bonds, to feel pride, to feel anger, you are playing with a fire that will consume us all." "The will of fire is what protects this village," Hiruzen replied, turning to leave. "And I will not allow you to extinguish it in him. Stay away from Naruto, Danzo. This is your only warning." The Hokage left, leaving Danzo alone in the shadows. He stared at the crystal ball, at the image of the grinning, whiskered boy. "You see a legacy, old friend," Danzo murmured to the empty room. "I see a weapon, and all weapons must have a master." The day of the Genin exams arrived. A palpable tension filled the academy. This was the day that would define their future. The first part was a written exam. Naruto, who would have normally turned in a blank or joke-filled sheet, now had the int and whisk to tackle the questions. He understood the theory, the history, the tactics. He finished with time to spare, earning a shocked look from Iruka when he collected the papers. The final, practical test was held in the main academy hall. One by one, students were called in to perform the clone jutsu in front of Iruka and Mizuki. Naruto waited, his mind calm. He saw Hinata emerge, a bright red Konoha headband tied around her neck, and she gave him a small, encouraging smile before being swept away by her family. Finally, his name was called, Naruto Uzumaki. He walked into the room. Iruka sat at the table, his expression neutral. Mizuki leaned back in his chair, a smug look on his face. He was certain this was where Naruto's luck would run out. The clone jutsu was his most infamous failure. All right, Naruto, Iruka said kindly. All you need to do is create 3 functional clones. Take your time. Naruto nodded. He brought his hands together in a single, different hand seal. The Ram seal, Shadow Clone Jutsu. There wasn't the usual soft poof of a standard clone. There was a thunderclap of displaced air. The room was instantly filled with 100 solid, perfect copies of Naruto Uzumaki. They filled every corner of the room, some sitting on the desk, others hanging from the ceiling. All of them grinning mischievously. Iruka's jaw dropped. His eyes were wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Mizuki shot to his feet, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Where did you learn that jutsu? Mizuki shrieked. That's a forbidden technique. A Junin-level jutsu. One of the clones, leaning casually against the wall, spoke up. The old man gave me a pass to the library. Said I should study hard. Another clone, perched on the windowsill, chimed in. Yeah, it was in a scroll in the Advanced Theory section. The basic clone jutsu is just a wasteful light show. This one is way more practical. Iruka was speechless. He stared at the army of Narutos, then back at the single, calm original standing in the center of the room. He remembered Hiruzen telling him to give Naruto a fair chance. But he never could have imagined this. This wasn't just passing. This was a statement. You pass, Iruka stammered, grabbing a headband from the table. Mizuki looked apoplectic. You can't be serious. He used a forbidden jutsu. He cheated. Naruto let the clones disperse in puffs of smoke. He walked forward and took the headband from Iruka's outstretched hand. The test was to create 3 clones. Mizuki-sensei, Naruto said, his voice ringing with a newfound confidence. I created more. The method wasn't specified. Or am I going to get detention for being too successful? He tied the cool metal plate of the headband around his forehead. It felt heavier than he had imagined. It felt like a crown. Iruka finally found his voice, a huge, proud grin spreading across his face. Congratulations, Naruto. You're a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto walked out of that room a different person. He was no longer the demon brat, the dead last, the village pariah. He was a ninja. The game had truly begun, and he had just cleared the tutorial. The next level, being placed on a team with the brooding rival he had just earned the respect of, and the girl who had a crush on him, was about to begin. And he couldn't wait. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Wave of Change. The savory aroma of miso broth and roasted pork was a far cry from the sour stench of alley he had woken up in just a few weeks ago. Steam ghosted across Naruto's face, a warm, welcome veil. He slurped a mouthful of noodles from his bowl at Ichiraku Ramen, the rich flavor a perfect counterpoint to the deep, satisfying ache in his muscles. He'd earned this. A stool scraped against the floor beside him, and he glanced over to see Iruka-sensei sliding into the seat, a weary but proud smile on his face. I had a feeling I'd find you here, Iruka said, gesturing to Tsuki for his usual order. Celebrating, I hope. Naruto swallowed his noodles and grinned, the expression bright and genuine. Best bowl of ramen I've ever had. Tastes like victory. Tsuki chuckled from behind the counter. Victory is my secret ingredient. Iruka's smile softened. He looked at the boy next to him, truly looked at him, and saw the profound shift. It wasn't just the new headband, gleaming under the warm lights of the ramen stand. The manic, desperate energy that had always clung to Naruto like a shroud was gone, replaced by a calm, self-assured aura. His eyes, once clouded with mischief and a deep, unspoken pain, were now sharp and clear, observant. You did more than pass, Naruto, Iruka said, his voice low and sincere. What you did in there, that level of chakra control, the mastery of a forbidden jutsu, I've never seen anything like it from an academy student. Not even the prodigies. Naruto shrugged, a gesture of casual confidence. I've been working hard. The Hokage gave me a chance, and I decided not to waste it. It's more than that, Iruka pressed gently. The way you handled Mizuki, you didn't get angry. You didn't even seem surprised. It was like you were playing a game and you were 5 moves ahead of him. The observation was so accurate it sent a small jolt through Naruto. He used observe on his teacher, a man who had become his first real link to the village. Name: Iruka Yumino. Level: 18. Title: Konoha Chunin, Academy Instructor. Disposition: proud, concerned, protective. Thoughts: his growth is astounding. Is it healthy? He seems to have lost his childishness overnight. But maybe that's what he needed to survive. I have to make sure I'm here for him, no matter what. A wave of warmth washed over Naruto, genuine and deep. He had seen Iruka as just a teacher before, one of the few who didn't openly despise him. But now he saw the depth of his care. He was a true ally. Mizuki-sensei never liked me, Naruto said simply, choosing his words with care. I just decided I was done letting people like him control how I feel. Their food arrived, and for a few minutes, they ate in a comfortable silence, the familiar rhythm of the ramen stand a soothing backdrop. It was Iruka who broke it. Team assignments are tomorrow, he said. No matter who you're with, remember what it means to wear that headband. It means the village is your family, and its people are your comrades. You protect them, all of them. Naruto met his gaze, the gravity of the words settling over him. I will, sensei. I promise. The next day, the atmosphere in the academy classroom was electric. It was no longer a room of students, but a gathering of newly minted ninja. He air buzzed with excitement and nervous energy. Headbands were everywhere, worn with a fierce, almost comical pride. Some, like Kiba, wore them with a cocky grin. Others, like Shino, seemed to absorb the metal plate into their already stoic personas. Naruto sat in his usual spot in the back, but today, he wasn't ignored. Several of his classmates nodded to him, some even offering a quiet, congratulations. His display with the shadow clones had become the stuff of instant legend. He had shattered their perception of him as the class clown, the dead last. He was now an unknown, a wild card, and that made him interesting. He watched as Shikamaru Nara slumped in his seat, his head already on the desk for a nap. Observed revealed a startlingly high int stat and a disposition of profoundly lazy. He saw Choji Akamichi happily munching on a bag of chips, and Ino Yamanaka preening as she tried to catch Sasuke's eye. Then his gaze fell on his teammates-to-be. Sakura Haruno was practically vibrating with a mixture of hope and anxiety, her eyes locked on Sasuke. Name: Sakura Haruno. Level: 4. Title: Konoha Genin. Disposition: infatuated. Sasuke Uchiha annoyed Naruto Uzumaki. Thoughts: please let me be on Sasuke-kun's team. Anyone but Naruto. As long as I'm with Sasuke-kun, I can show him how amazing I am. Naruto sighed internally. That was going to be a tough nut to crack. His charisma could only do so much against a fangirl's devotion. Then there was Sasuke. He sat by the window, staring out at the village, a portrait of cool indifference. But Naruto's skill saw past the facade. Name: Sasuke Uchiha. Level: 5. Title: Last of the Uchiha, Konoha Genin. Disposition: impatient, arrogant, focused. Thoughts: these losers don't matter. I just need a Junin instructor who can teach me powerful jutsu. Everyone else is just a stepping stone on my path to killing him. Stepping stone, huh? Naruto thought with a wry internal smile. We'll see about that. Iruka walked in, a stack of papers in his hand. And the room fell silent. He cleared his throat and began reading out the names. Team 10. Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Your Junin instructor will be Asuma Sarutobi. Ino screeched in protest about being paired with the lazy one and the fat one, while Shikamaru muttered, "What a drag," without lifting his head. Team 8. Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame. Your instructor will be Kurenai Yuhi. Naruto caught Hinata's eye across the room. She gave him a tiny, shy smile and a hopeful nod, her cheeks flushing pink. He returned the smile, feeling a genuine sense of happiness for her. Kurenai was a genjutsu specialist. It was a good match for the sensory-focused members of Team 8. Then came the announcement he was waiting for. Team 7, Iruka said, looking up from his paper and directly at the three of them. Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno. Sakura's head slumped onto her desk in theatrical despair. And Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura's head shot up, a whiplash of emotion on her face. Joy at being with Sasuke warred with misery at being with Naruto. Sasuke didn't react at all. Naruto simply nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. He Hokage wouldn't put the Uchiha survivor and the Jinchuriki on separate teams. They were Konoha's two most valuable, and volatile, assets. It made sense to keep them together under a single, elite Junin. Your Junin instructor, Iruka finished, as Kakashi Hatake. He'll meet you here after lunch. With that, the teams were dismissed. The other groups met their new sensei and departed, leaving the three members of Team 7 alone in the empty classroom. The silence was thick and awkward. Sakura immediately moved to sit next to Sasuke, who continued to ignore her. An hour passed. Then too. Sakura's initial excitement curdled into frustration. He's late, she fumed, pacing back and forth. What kind of elite Junin is late to meet his new team? It's completely unprofessional. Sasuke just grunted, his eyes closed. Old Naruto would have joined in the complaining, or used the opportunity to pull a prank. New Naruto saw this for what it was, their first test. A test of patience. A test of how they functioned as a unit with no leader. He decided to take the initiative. He's testing us, Naruto said calmly, speaking for the first time since Iruka had left. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked at him, surprised he had spoken. He wants to see how we react, Naruto continued, his voice even and reasonable. His charisma stat lent his words a subtle weight, a sense of credibility. Do we fight? Do we fall apart? Do we just sit here and complain? Or do we act like a team? And what do you suggest we do, Naruto? Sakura asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Go looking for him. No, Naruto said, shaking his head. We prepare. We treat his arrival as the beginning of the mission. We don't know his personality, his skills, or what he expects from us. So let's use this time to establish what we are. He stood up and walked to the center of the room. We're a team now, whether we like it or not. And right now, we know nothing about each other. I'll start. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I am good at the Shadow Clone Jutsu and my stamina is high. My weakness is Genjutsu and I'm still working on my Taijutsu form. He looked at Sakura. His directness and willingness to admit a weakness threw her off. She had expected him to boast or act like an idiot. She hesitated, then sighed. Sakura Haruno. My chakra control is the best in our class, and I'm good with theory. My weakness is practical combat. The admission was quiet, but honest. They both looked at Sasuke. He opened his eyes, a flicker of something unreadable in their dark depths. He had been listening. Sasuke Uchiha, he said, his voice flat. I have the Sharingan. My goal is to kill a certain man. It was grim, but it was a start. Okay, Naruto said, nodding. So we have a frontline brawler with a lot of chakra, a Say combat specialist with a visual Kekkei Genkei, and a rearguard support with excellent chakra control for potential medical or genjutsu applications. That's a balanced team. He had just used academy textbook terms to describe them. But hearing it laid out so clinically made them sound like a real unit. Sakura looked impressed despite herself. Sasuke just watched him, his expression one of intense calculation. He was re-evaluating the boy he thought he knew. Now, for the prank, Naruto said with a grin. Sakura groaned. I knew it. Not a prank, Naruto corrected. An intelligence-gathering exercise. A way to learn about our sensei before he even says a word. He picked up a dusty chalkboard eraser. I'm going to stick this on top of the door. If he's a standard, by the book Chunin, he'll check the room for traps and spot it. If he's arrogant, he'll walk right into it, and we'll know he underestimates us. If he's a true elite Junin, he'll deal with it in a way we don't expect. No matter what happens, we gain information. He wasn't doing it for a cheap laugh. He had turned a childish prank into a logical, strategic maneuver. He wedged the eraser in place, then sat back down. Three of them waited in a new kind of silence. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was expectant. They were a unit, waiting for their first challenge. A few minutes later, a hand appeared on the doorframe, and it began to slide open. A man with a shock of gravity-defying silver hair, his face obscured by a mask and a crookedly worn headband covering his left eye, poked his head in. The eraser fell. He-man's visible eye tracked its descent. In a movement too fast to follow, his hand shot up and snatched it out of the air, a mere inch from his head. He looked at the eraser in his hand, then at the three genin. His eye curving into what looked like a smile. "My first impression of you three," Kakashi Hatake said, his voice lazy and bored. "Is that you're a bunch of idiots." The crushing disappointment was immediate. But Naruto didn't let it show. He used observe. Name: Kakashi Hatake. Level: Title: The Copy Ninja, Junin Commander. Disposition: lethargic, watchful, grieving. Thoughts: okay, so they have some initiative. The Jinchuriki came up with that, didn't he? He framed it as an intel exercise. Clever. Hiruzen wasn't kidding, he's different. The Uchiha is a ball of hate, and the girl is still just a fangirl. This will be a challenge. Naruto's mind raced. Kakashi had seen through it all. He wasn't disappointed. He was testing their reaction to his disappointment. It was a psychological game. And Naruto was now a player. On the roof, the sun was warm. Kakashi leaned against the railing, the picture of apathy. "All right, let's get to know each other. Tell me your likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future." "You first," he said, pointing at Naruto. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like Ichiraku ramen and training with my friends. I dislike the 3 minutes you have to wait for instant ramen to cook. My hobby is trying out new training methods. And my dream," he said, his voice gaining a hard edge of determination, "is to become Hokage and create a village where no one has to be alone like I was." Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly. It was a more mature, more focused version of the usual childish dream. There was a philosophy behind it, born of pain. "All right, next," Kakashi said, turning to Sakura. "I'm Sakura Haruno. What I like is, the person I like is," she glanced at Sasuke, blushing. "My hobby is, my dream for the future is," she squealed and hid her face. "Useless." Kakashi's thoughts supplied, courtesy of observe. "And you," Kakashi said, his voice flat. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha," Sasuke said, his voice cold as ice. "I don't particularly like anything. I dislike a lot of things. And what I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and kill a certain man." The silence that followed was heavy and cold. Kakashi's cheerful facade dropped for a second, and Naruto saw a flicker of something ancient and sad in his eye. "Good," Kakashi said, his lazy tone returning. "You're all uniquely, you. We start our first mission tomorrow. A survival exercise. Meet me at Training Ground 7 at 5 a.m. Oh, and I wouldn't recommend eating breakfast. You'll just throw it up." He vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving them alone on the rooftop. The next morning, Naruto was the first to arrive at the training ground. The sun was not yet up, and a thick mist clung to the ground. In the center of the clearing were 3 thick wooden posts and a small memorial stone, etched with dozens of names. Naruto walked over to it, reading the inscriptions. These were ninja who had died in the line of duty. He used observe on the stone itself. Konoha Memorial Stone, a monument to those who died protecting their comrades and the village. A place of great sorrow and great honor. Lingering emotional residue detected. Grief Kakashi Hatake. So this place was important to their new sensei. Another piece of the puzzle. Sasuke and Sakura arrived together just as the sun began to rise. Kakashi, of course, arrived 3 hours later, holding up a hand in a cheerful greeting. "Yo, you're late," Sakura shrieked. Kakashi ignored her, placing a clock on one of the posts. All right, the clock is set for noon. Your task is simple. He held up two small bells that jingled in the quiet air. You have to take these bells from me. Those who succeed will pass. Those who fail will be tied to one of those posts. Watch as I eat my lunch in front of you. Wait, Sakura said. There are only two bells. What does that mean? It means at least one of you will be going back to the academy, Kakashi said, his eye curving into a merciless smile. Feel free to use any weapon, including shuriken and kunai. If you're not prepared to come at me with the intent to kill, you won't stand a chance. Ready, start. In a flash, Sasuke and Sakura were gone, melting into the trees. It was the correct shinobi response. Naruto, however, stayed put. Kakashi looked at him, raising an eyebrow. What's the matter? Not going to hide? Why hide? Naruto asked, his stance relaxed but ready. You're the one we have to beat. Seems more efficient to just come straight at you. Kakashi chuckled. Confidence. I like it, but confidence without skill is just suicide. Quote, then let's find out how much skill I have, Naruto said, and charged. He didn't charge in blindly. He created 24 shadow clones as he ran, spreading them out, attacking from multiple angles. It was a test, a probe. He needed to see how the legendary copy ninja fought. The result was a massacre. Kakashi moved with an economy of motion that was terrifying. He flowed through the clones like water, dispatching them with single, precise strikes. He never took his eye off the original Naruto, and he never once took his hands out of his pockets. Naruto jumped back, his mind processing the data. Kakashi was on another level entirely. A frontal assault was impossible. He needed a new plan. He melted back into the forest, leaving one clone behind to keep Kakashi occupied. His first priority was to find his team. He created another 50 clones and sent them out with a single command: find Sasuke and Sakura. Do not engage. Report back. Within minutes, a clone found Sakura. She was standing in a clearing, staring at a gruesome vision of a bloodied and mutilated Sasuke. A classic genjutsu. Naruto's clone approached her cautiously. Sakura, it's a genjutsu. Release. The clone placed a hand on her shoulder and flared its chakra, disrupting the illusion. Sakura gasped, the horrific image vanishing, and collapsed to her knees, trembling. He's so strong, she stammered. Of course he is, Naruto's clone said, its voice firm but not unkind. He's a Junin. We're fresh out of the academy. Did you think this was going to be easy? We can't beat him alone, Sakura. He's turning us against each other, picking us off one by one. It's the only logical strategy. Another clone poofed into existence beside them. I've found Sasuke. He's engaging Kakashi head-on near the river. He's losing. Badly. Naruto's main body was already on the move. He arrived at the edge of the clearing to see Sasuke buried up to his neck in the ground, a result of Kakashi's headhunter jutsu. Kakashi was gone, likely toying with someone else now. Naruto walked up to Sasuke's disembodied head. The Uchiha's face was a mask of pure fury and humiliation. Don't just stand there, idiot. Get me out of here. Naruto knelt down. I will. But first, we need to talk. You want a bell, right? So do I. And so does Sakura. There are only two bells. What do you think this test is really about? It's about being the best, Sasuke snarled. Being strong enough to take what you want. No, Naruto said, his voice dropping. He used observe. Sasuke's disposition was humiliated and enraged. Logic wouldn't work. He had to appeal to his goal. It's a test of teamwork. Look at the memorial stone over there. It's covered in the names of heroes. Kakashi Sensei's old teammates are on that stone. Do you know the village's motto about teamwork? Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He's not testing our individual strength. He's testing if we have what it takes to be comrades he can trust with his life. He could see his words hitting home. Sasuke's rage subsided, replaced by a grudging understanding. Ants us to work together to get the two bells, Naruto continued, pressing his advantage. And then what? What does the person with no bell do? The realization dawned on Sasuke's face. They share. No, Naruto corrected. The two with bells give one to the person who has none, and they all fail together for breaking the rules. Or, better yet, they all pass together because they understood the real lesson. It's not about the bells. It's about the team. He dug Sasuke out of the ground. Sasuke stood up, brushing himself off, refusing to meet Naruto's eyes. So what's your plan? Sasuke asked. The question a quiet admission that Naruto was now the leader. We hit him with everything we've got. Together, they found Sakura and Naruto laid out the strategy. It was simple, leveraging all of their strengths. The alarm on the post began to beep, signaling they had 5 minutes left. It was now or never. They found Kakashi leaning against a tree, reading his ridiculous orange book. Giving up already? He asked without looking up. Not a chance, Naruto said, stepping out of the trees. Behind him, Sasuke and Sakura took up positions on his flanks. Kakashi finally put his book away. His visible eye narrowed. So you figured it out. We're a team, Sakura said, a newfound confidence in her voice. You're fighting all of us. A team of genin, Kakashi sighed. This won't take long. Sharingan. He pulled up his headband, revealing a spinning, crimson eye with 3 tomo. The sheer pressure of his chakra filled the clearing. Now, Naruto yelled. He unleashed his ultimate technique. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. The clearing exploded with 1,000 Narutos. They swarmed towards Kakashi from every direction, a tidal wave of orange jumpsuits. While Kakashi was occupied with the clone army, Sasuke, his own Sharingan activated, moved in. He engaged Kakashi in a furious taijutsu battle, his movements now predicted and enhanced by his dojutsu. But he was just another distraction. While the chaos raged, Sakura had been carefully weaving hand signs. She slammed her hands on the ground. Earth style. Fissure. It was a basic jutsu, one she must have crammed from a scroll, but it was perfectly timed. The ground beneath Kakashi's feet split open, forcing him to leap into the air to avoid it. And that's where the real Naruto was waiting. He had used the clones as a screen to get above Kakashi. He came down like a hawk, not aiming for the bells, but for Kakashi's book. He snatched it from the Junin's vest and held it up triumphantly. I think this belongs to me. Kakashi landed, looking from the book in Naruto's hand to the bells still on his hip, then to the exhausted but determined faces of his 3 students. The alarm on the post let out a final, shrill ring. Time was up. Kakashi's eye curved into a smile. You didn't get the bells. No, Naruto said, panting. But we fought as a team. We figured out the true meaning of the test. And I got your precious book. A tense silence fell over the clearing. Sasuke and Sakura looked at Naruto, then at Kakashi, waiting for the verdict. Kakashi reached up and pulled his headband back down over his Sharingan. He walked over to the memorial stone and looked at the names. You pass, he said quietly. All of you. Team 7 has its first mission tomorrow. A cheer went up from Sakura. Sasuke allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smirk. Naruto just grinned, tossing the book back to Kakashi. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the training ground, Naruto felt a sudden, sharp spike of intent from the direction of the village. It was familiar, malicious. Mizuki, a Chunin, bleeding from a deep gash on his arm, flickered into the clearing. Kakashi-sama, it's an emergency. Mizuki has escaped from the interrogation unit. He's taken the forbidden scroll of sealing and he's badly wounded Iruka-sensei at the academy. Naruto's blood ran cold. The celebration died in his throat. This wasn't a test anymore. This was real. Before Kakashi could say a word, Naruto was a blur of motion, sprinting towards the village. Naruto! Kakashi yelled. He heard my teacher. Naruto's voice echoed back, filled with a cold fury that made even the Junin pause. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged a look, and without hesitation, they followed him. Kakashi sighed, a hint of a proud smile on his face, and vanished to follow his reckless, troublesome, and utterly unique new team. The real test had just begun. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Bridge of Heroes. The world narrowed to a tunnel of churning leaves and the desperate, ragged sound of his own breathing. Every pump of his legs, every ounce of strength, was fueled by a singular, ice-cold thought. He heard Iruka-sensei. It was a simple fact, but it resonated with the force of a tectonic shift, cracking through the calm facade of the gamer's mind. The system could regulate his panic, could file away his fear, but it couldn't erase his loyalty. Hat was a variable written in his very soul. He burst through the trees into a moonlit clearing and skidded to a halt. The scene before him was a tableau of betrayal. Iruka was slumped against a tree, his chunin vest dark with blood, his breathing shallow. Across from him, clutching the enormous, sacred forbidden scroll of sealing, was Mizuki. His face, usually a mask of false friendliness, was iced into a snarl of manic glee and desperation. A large shuriken was clutched in his hand. "You see, Iruka," Mizuki was saying, his voice a high-pitched rant. "This is the power I deserve. The power this village has denied me. And it's all thanks to him." He gestured wildly at Naruto with the scroll. "The monster you've been protecting all along." Naruto's eyes locked on Iruka's pained expression, and a cold fury unlike anything he had ever felt settled over him. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger of his younger days. This was a deep, chilling rage, focused to a razor's edge by Gamer's mind. A blue screen flickered at the edge of his vision. Quest alert. A teacher's debt. Objective: protect Iruka Yumino and defeat the traitor Mizuki. Rewards: 5,000 Express, new title. Bonus objective: recover the forbidden scroll of sealing. Bonus rewards: +10 stat points, scroll of sealing added to inventory locked. Failure: death of Iruka Yumino. Permanent status effect: grief. The stakes were laid bare. He ignored the potential rewards and focused on the failure condition. It was unacceptable. He stepped forward, the crunch of a twig under his boot startlingly loud in the tense silence. Mizuki's head snapped towards him, a triumphant, cruel smile spreading across his face. "Naruto, perfect timing. Come here. Give me the scroll you stole earlier, and together, we can rule." The words were nonsensical, a desperate attempt at manipulation. Naruto used observe. Name: Mizuki. Level: 15. Title: Traitor of Konoha. Disposition: manic, delusional, hateful. Thoughts: the demon finally shows up. Now I can turn him against Iruka, against the village, and finish them both. I'll be a hero. No, I'll be powerful. They'll all respect me then. Naruto's gaze flickered to Iruka. "Sensei, are you okay?" "Naruto, get away from here." Iruka coughed, clutching his side. "He's lying to you. He used you to get the scroll." "Oh, Iruka, always the noble fool," Mizuki sneered. "You want to know why the village hates you, Naruto? Why they've always treated you like dirt? Shall I tell you the big secret that everyone but you knows?" "Don't, Mizuki. It's forbidden," Iruka yelled, trying to push himself to his feet. This was it, the question that had haunted his entire life. The reason for the glares, the whispers, the loneliness. He braced himself, his mind a fortress of calm. 12 years ago, Mizuki said, his voice dripping with venom, the fourth Hokage defeated the nine-tailed demon fox that attacked our village. But he didn't kill it. He couldn't. He had to seal it away into the body of a newborn baby. That baby was you, Naruto. You were the nine-tailed fox in human form. The words hit him like a physical blow. 1,000 memories, 1,000 glares, insults, and moments of unexplained hatred, slammed into place, forming a coherent, horrifying picture. A new notification seared itself into his vision. Due to a world-altering revelation, a new title has been acquired. Title equipped: Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Grants massive bonus to HP and CP pools. Greatly enhances regeneration. Attracts negative attention from those aware of your status. May have other side effects. HP: 250 to 1000. CP: 150 to 600. The sheer scale of the numbers was staggering. The source of his immense stamina, his freakish healing, it was all because of the monster inside him. The pain of the revelation was immense. A deep, crushing weight. But Gamer's mind held. It took the emotional agony and filed it away as data. Fact: I am the container for a demon. Variable: this changes how people see me. Conclusion: it does not change who I am. He saw Iruka looking at him, his face a mask of terror and pity, expecting him to break. He saw Mizuki's triumphant smirk, waiting for his New weapon to despair and turn on its former master. Naruto looked down at his hands, then back up at Mizuki. His expression wasn't one of rage or sorrow. It was one of cold, hard clarity. So what? He said. Mizuki's smirk vanished. What? So I have the 9 tails sealed inside me, Naruto elaborated, his voice steady. How does that change anything? I'm still Naruto Uzumaki, and Iruka-sensei is still the first person who ever acknowledged me. You, on the other hand, you're just a traitor who hurt my teacher. And for that, I'm going to make you pay. He flared his chakra, the sudden Inkriya, say in his reserves making the very air crackle. Just as he was about to move, 2 figures landed silently beside him. Sasuke and Sakura. Took you long enough, loser, Sasuke said, his Sharingan already spinning to life. He glanced at the scroll on Mizuki's back, then at the wounded Iruka. Troublesome. Naruto, are you all right? Sakura asked, her eyes wide with concern as she took in the scene. She immediately moved to Iruka's side, pulling out a small medical kit from her pouch. Her hands trembled, but her focus was absolute. Naruto nodded, a sense of profound gratitude warming his chest. They had followed him. They were here. As a team. You think a few brats can stop me? Mizuki shrieked, his composure shattering. He hurled the massive Fuma Shuriken, its spinning blades whistling through the air, aimed not at Naruto, but at the vulnerable Iruka and Sakura. It never reached them. Sasuke moved like lightning, a blur of motion. A chain attached to a shuriken of his own wrapped around the Fuma Shuriken's central ring, yanking it off course and sending it embedding deep into a tree. Sakura, protect Iruka-sensei and the scroll on his back. That's our mission objective, Naruto commanded, his voice ringing with newfound authority. His charisma lent his words an undeniable weight. Sasuke, we're taking him down. I'll go high, you go low. On my mark. Sakura nodded, her expression hardening with determination as she stood guard. Sasuke gave a sharp, affirmative grunt, his eyes locked on Mizuki. Mark, Naruto yelled, and the clearing exploded into action. He formed a hand seal, and 100 shadow clones burst into existence, swarming Mizuki from all sides. It was a perfect diversion. While Mizuki was frantically batting away the wave of orange, Sasuke shot forward, low to the ground. He slid under Mizuki's guard, his legs scything out to sweep the traitor's feet from under him. Mizuki, caught off guard, stumbled. It was the only opening they needed. The real Naruto had used the clones as a screen, leaping high into the trees. He dropped down from above, his foot extended in a powerful axe kick aimed directly at Mizuki's shoulder, forcing him to drop the forbidden scroll. Mizuki cried out in pain as the scroll tumbled to the ground. Sakura, seeing her chance, threw a kunai with a wire attached, snagging the scroll and yanking it away from the traitor. The fight was over in less than 10 seconds. It was a symphony of perfect coordination. A feint, a sweep, a disabling blow, and objective retrieval. They had operated not as 3 genin, but as a single, efficient unit. Mizuki cradled his dislocated shoulder, his eyes wild with disbelief and hatred. Before he could make another move, a dozen Anbu dropped from the trees, surrounding him. Kakashi landed lightly beside his students. His one visible eye taking in the scene, Mizuki captured, the scroll secured, Iruka being tended to by Sakura. He looked at Naruto, who was helping Iruka to his feet. Good work, all of you. Iruka looked from Naruto to Sasuke, then to Sakura, his eyes filled with a powerful emotion. He looked at Naruto, at the boy who had just learned the most devastating secret of his life and had not faltered. Had instead chosen to protect him. Naruto, Iruka said, his voice thick. Come here. Close your eyes. Naruto did as he was told. He felt Iruka's hand at his forehead, untying his goggles. Then, he felt the cool, familiar metal of a headband being tied in its place. Congratulations, Iruka said, a proud smile breaking through his pain. You've more than earned it. Naruto opened his eyes. He saw his own reflection in the metal plate of Iruka's headband. His teacher had given him his own. It was a gesture of immense respect, of acceptance. It was everything he had ever wanted. Quest completed. A teacher's debt. Rewards. 5,000 Express. New title. Hero of Konoha. Budding item. Iruka's headband acquired. Bonus objective complete. +10 stat points awarded. Scroll of ceiling added to inventory locked. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You are now level 7. You have gained 10 stat points. Total stat points to allocate, 20. He poured the points in, strengthening his core. 10 into VIT. Making him even more of a tank, and 5 each into int and whis, preparing for the jutsu he knew he would soon learn. The next day, Team 7 stood in the Hokage's office. The mood was somber. Iruka was recovering in the hospital, and Mizuki was in the custody of the torture and interrogation force. Your team's handling of the situation was exemplary, Hiruzen said, his yes lingering on Naruto with a grandfatherly pride. You showed coordination and decisiveness far beyond what is expected of fresh genin. As such, I believe you are ready. He gestured to a man standing in the corner of the room. He was weathered and old, with a towel around his neck and the distinct smell of sake about him. He looked at the three of them with a dismissive, bloodshot eye. This was their client, Tizuna, the master bridge builder. You're sending me home with a bunch of snot-nosed kids. Tizuna slurred, especially the short one with the stupid look on his face. Naruto felt Sakura bristle beside him, and saw Sasuke's eyebrow twitch in irritation. Old Naruto would have risen to the bait, shouting and posturing. New Naruto simply stepped forward and gave a slight, formal bow. Tizuna-san, he said, his voice polite but firm, cutting through the man's drunken haze. We are Team 7 of the Hidden Leaf. Our Junin leader is Kakashi Hatake, one of the most renowned shinobi in the world. We are more than capable of ensuring your safe return. Your life is in our hands. We would appreciate your cooperation. His charisma stat wasn't about being liked, it was about influence. His calm, authoritative tone completely disarmed Tizuna. The old man blinked, taken aback by the serious demeanor of the short one. He grunted, but didn't offer another insult. Kakashi's visible eye curved. Naruto had taken control of the situation before it could even begin. The journey started an hour later. The mood on the road was light. Sakura, impressed by Naruto's handling of Tizuna, Llly asked him a question about his training. Sasuke walked in a stony silence, but Naruto noticed he kept pace with the group, no longer trying to walk ahead and separate himself. He was part of the team now. Naruto, however, was on high alert. This was their first mission outside the village. His senses were heightened, his mind scanning for any potential threats. AC rank escort mission was tippy. Kali a protection detail against bandits or common thugs. But something felt off. His eyes fell on a puddle in the middle of the road. It hadn't rained in days. He subtly made a hand sign behind his back. A simple signal he and Sasuke had worked out during their spar. Potential threat, 12 o'clock. Sasuke's eyes flickered towards the puddle for a fraction of a second, his hand casually moving closer to the kunai pouch on his leg. Kakashi also noticed it, but he did nothing. This was another test. As they passed the puddle, two figures erupted from the water, chains with wicked claws on the end shooting out to wrap around Kakashi. The chains pulled taut, and in a brutal, horrifying instant, their Junin sensei was torn to shreds. Sakura screamed. Tizuna's face went pale with terror. The two attackers, ninja with rebreathers and hostile, merciless eyes, ignored them and charged straight for Naruto. One down, one of them growled. Now for the rest. But Naruto didn't panic. He saw Sakura freeze, and Sasuke tense for a fight. But he knew they were outmatched. This required a different strategy. He also knew something else. He had used Observe the second they appeared. Name: Gozu. Level: 14. Title: Demon Brother of the Mist. Name: Maizu. Level: 14. Title: Demon Brother of the Mist. They were Chunin level, dangerous, but not unbeatable. And more importantly, the shredded remains of Kakashi had turned into a block of wood. The substitution jutsu. Sasuke. Now, Naruto yelled. Sasuke was already moving. He threw a shuriken that pinned the chain of one of the ninja to a tree, then threw a kunai that wedged the other's gauntlet against the same trunk. In a second, both ninja were anchored to the spot. Sakura, guard Tizuna, Naruto commanded, his voice snapping her out of her fear-induced paralysis. She immediately put herself between the bridge builder and the enemy, a kunai gripped tight in her hand. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones. They didn't attack. Instead, half of them swarmed Gozu. The one on the left, while the other half swarmed Maizu. It wasn't an attack, it was a cage. The clones grabbed their arms, their legs, their heads, burying them in a pile of orange jumpsuits. Completely immobilizing them. The entire counterattack had taken less than 5 seconds. Kakashi dropped from a tree branch, looking thoroughly impressed. You handled that well. I was going to wait and see who they were after, but you didn't give them a chance. He strode over to the captured ninja, his expression turning serious. Demon Brothers of the Hidden Mist. Chunin level nin. Ya known for their assassination techniques. Which means our mission parameters have changed. He looked at Tazuna, his single eye sharp as a blade. This is no longer a C rank mission. You have a professional shinobi hunter after you. You owe us an explanation. Tazuna crumbled under the pressure, slumping to the ground. He explained everything. His land, the Wave Country, was being strangled by a shipping magnate. A cruel tyrant named Gato. Gato had a monopoly on all shipping, keeping the island nation impoverished. The bridge Tazuna was building was their only hope for freedom, a way to ECT to the mainland and bypass Gato's control. Gato had hired ninja to stop him. Which means the one hunting you, Kakashi finished, his voice grim, is likely an elite. Possibly even one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. We should return to the village, Sakura said, her voice trembling. This is an A- rank mission, at least. We're not ready for this. She was right. It was logical. But Naruto looked at Tazuna's face. At the desperation and hope warring in the old man's eyes. He thought about his dream, to create a village where no one had to be alone or helpless. That dream couldn't be confined to Konoha's walls. We're continuing the mission, Naruto said. Everyone looked at him. Naruto, be serious. Sakura protested. We could die. Tazuna-san hired Konoha ninja to protect him, Naruto said. His gaze unwavering as he looked at Kakashi. He is our responsibility. The mission isn't to walk him down the road. It's to ensure his safety until he completes his task. If we abandon him now, he dies. And his entire country loses its only hope. We don't abandon our comrades. And we don't abandon the people we've sworn to protect. He wasn't shouting. He was speaking with a quiet, unshakable conviction that filled the clearing. He looked at Sasuke. You want to get stronger, right? You won't get stronger by running away from a real fight. He looked at Sakura. And you want to prove you're a real kunoichi. You do that by facing down your fear, not giving into it. He had appealed to their core motivations, their deepest desires. His charisma wasn't just a stat, it was an innate understanding of the people around him. Sasuke smirked, a thrill of anticipation in his eyes. The dope is right. I'm not running. Sakura looked at Naruto, then at Sasuke. She saw their determination, and it sparked her own. She took a deep breath and nodded. I'm with you. Kakashi watched them, a hidden smile on his face. He had been prepared to force them to return for their own safety. But Naruto had just done his job for him, and had forged them into a stronger team in the process. Well, Kakashi sighed dramatically. It seems my students are a little more noble than I am. The decision has been made. Let's get to the wave. They continued their journey, the mood now heavy with a grim purpose. As they took a small boat across the water, a thick, unnatural mist began to roll in, blanketing the sea. The air grew cold, heavy with a palpable, suffocating killing intent that made the hairs on Naruto's arms stand on end. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura whispered, her voice tight with fear. I know, Kakashi said, his hand already on his headband, ready to unveil his Sharingan. A shape began to resolve in the mist ahead of them. A man, wrapped in bandages up to his nose, with no OWS and a hidden mist headband worn sideways. He was standing casually on the hilt of a massive blade, as long as he was tall, that was embedded in a tree branch. Naruto's observed skill worked, but the result sent a chill down his spine. Name: Zabuza Momochi. Level: Title: Demon of the Hidden Mist, former 7 swordsman. Disposition: predatory, confident. Well, Zabuza's voice echoed across the water, distorted by his mask. If it isn't Kakashi of the Sharingan. And it looks like you've brought some adorable little brats with you. Sorry, Kids, he said, his gaze sweeping over them, cold and utterly devoid of mercy. But I'm going to have to kill your sensei. And you along with him. The real mission had just begun. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Demon and the Bridge Builder. The killing intent was a physical thing. It wasn't an abstract threat. It was a crushing weight, a suffocating pressure that stole the air from your lungs and replaced it with ice. It was the absolute, predatory certainty of a superior being staring at its prey. Naruto had felt hatred before, a million times over in the glares of the villagers. He had felt malice from Mizuki. This was different. This was a calm, professional promise of death. Sakura was trembling, her hand gripping a kunai so tightly her knuckles were white. Sasuke stood his ground, his body tense as a drawn bowstring, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. Even Tazuna, the grizzled bridge builder, seemed to have sobered up in an instant, his face a pasty shade of gray. Only Kakashi seemed unaffected, though Naruto's skill painted a different picture. Name: Kakashi Hatake. Level: Title: The Copy Ninja, Junin Commander. Disposition: Lethal, Focused. Thoughts: Zabuza Momochi, the Demon of the Hidden Mist. This is bad. An S-rank missing nin. The mission is a failure. I have to get the kids out of here, even if it means my life. Damn Tazuna for lying. So, their sensei was already planning a sacrifice. Naruto's mind filed that away. It was a noble thought, but unacceptable. A team didn't sacrifice its members. They won. So I was right, Kakashi said, his lazy drawl gone, replaced by the clipped, sharp tone of a commander on the battlefield. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, towards his headband. You're Zabuza Momochi, a missing nin from the village hidden in the mist. Zabuza let out a low chuckle that seemed to be swallowed by the thick, rolling mist. And you're Kakashi of the Sharingan. It's an honor. But you'll have to excuse me. I don't have time to play with you. The old man is mine. The air warped. In the space between heartbeats, Zabuza was no longer on the tree branch but on the surface of the water, standing as if it were solid ground. He made a series of complex, one-handed hand signs. Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. The world dissolved. The mist, already thick, became an impenetrable wall of white. Naruto couldn't see Sasuke or Sakura, who were only feet away. He couldn't see the boat, the shore, anything. It was like being wrapped in a cold, wet shroud. His senses were screaming, but there was no data to process. 8 points. Zabuza's disembodied voice echoed around them, seeming to come from every direction at once. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Which vital point would you like to be struck from? The sheer psychological pressure was immense. This was a tactic designed to break an enemy's spirit before the first blow was even struck. Sakura let out a small, terrified gasp. Then, a new pressure flooded the area, just as powerful but different. It was fierce, protective. It was Kakashi. Don't worry. Kakashi's voice cut through the fog, a reassuring anchor in the disorienting white. I will protect you with my life. All of you. He pulled up his headband, and in the swirling mist, a crimson eye blazed to life. The Sharingan. Naruto felt a new notification pop up. Due to proximity to an active, high-level dojutsu, your skill, Observe, has gained 500 express. Observe has leveled up. Observe LVL 3 can now detect chakra levels and signatures. Suddenly, the white void was no longer empty. Through his enhanced skill, Naruto could now perceive the world as flows of energy. He saw the small, panicked blue flame of Sakura's chakra, the larger, spikier, and intensely focused indigo of Sasuke's. He saw the massive, calm, sea blue reserve of Kakashi. And then he saw Zabuza. The rogue ninja's chakra was a churning, chaotic turquoise, and it was moving fast. Zabuza materialized directly in the center of their formation, his massive executioner's blade swinging in a wide, horizontal arc. It happened in an instant. But Kakashi was faster. He appeared in a flicker, a kunai in his hand to block the massive sword. The screech of metal on metal, a piercing shriek in the mist. The force of the blow sent ripples across the water's surface. Zabuza reappeared behind Kakashi, a perfect feint, his sword swinging for the sensei's back. This Kakashi, however, dissolved into water. A water clone. The real Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza, a kunai pressed to the demon's throat. "It's over," Kakashi said, his voice cold. Naruto knew it wasn't. Zabuza's chakra signature hadn't even wavered. It was still calm, still confident. "Over." Zabuza chuckled, and this Zabuza, too, dissolved into a puddle. Another water clone. The attack had been a feint inside a feint. "You don't understand, Kakashi. You may have the Sharingan, but you can't beat me so easily." The real Zabuza's chakra flared directly behind Kakashi. He swung his blade, and this time, Kakashi wasn't fast enough to substitute. The massive sword cut deep into his side, and he was sent flying, crashing into the water with a huge splash. "Kakashi-sensei!" Sakura screamed. Zabuza didn't wait. He appeared on the water where Kakashi had sunk, forming a new set of hand signs. Water style. Water prison jutsu. The water around him erupted, forming a perfect sphere with Kakashi trapped inside. The copy ninja was alive, but he was held fast, one of Zabuza's hands connected to the surface of the prison, maintaining the jutsu. "This little prison is stronger than steel." Zabuza gloated, his attention now turning to the three genin and Tazuna, huddled on the boat. "I can deal with you brats first, then come back to finish him." "A bit of a dilemma, isn't it, Kakashi? You can't move, and if I move, you drown." This was the turning point. The test. Their leader was incapacitated, and an S-rank enemy was bearing down on them. Sasuke, ever the prodigy, knew they had to act. He gathered his chakra, his eyes burning with a mixture of fear and battle lust. He was about to charge. "Sasuke, wait." Naruto's voice was a sharp command, not a plea. Sasuke faltered, turning to glare at him. "What are you doing, idiot? We have to save him." "Charging in alone is suicide," Naruto said, his mind racing, processing the situation with the cold logic of the game. "He's a water-style user, on the water. He has every advantage. We attack him on our terms, not his." He looked at the trembling Sakura, at the terrified Tazuna. "Protect the bridge builder. That is our mission." His words, infused with the confidence of his charisma stat, resonated with a leader's authority. He wasn't the class clown anymore. He was the one with a plan. "What plan?" Sasuke demanded, his pride warring with the undeniable logic of Naruto's statement. "A shinobi's greatest weapon isn't jutsu," Naruto said, repeating a line he'd read in a bingo book in the library. "It's deception. We're going to hit him with a plan so stupid, so ridiculously genin level, that he'll never see it coming." He whispered the plan to Sasuke, his eyes never leaving Zabuza. Sasuke's initial expression of disbelief slowly morphed into a grudging smirk. It was insane. It was also brilliant. "Do it," Sasuke said. Naruto nodded. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 20 Narutos burst into existence on the small boat. Nearly capsizing it, they leapt onto the water, running full tilt towards Zabuza. Zabuza laughed. "Clones, you think you can beat me with the Academy's most basic trick?" With his free hand, he swung his massive blade, and with each swing, a half-dozen clones were dispelled in puffs of smoke. It was a massacre, but it was a distraction. While Zabuza's attention was on the clones in front of him, Sasuke leapt from the boat, spinning through the air and launching a massive Fuma Shuriken. The giant, four-bladed weapon whistled through the mist, aimed directly at Zabuza's head. Zabuza saw it coming. He sneered, catching the massive shuriken with his free hand, its spinning blade screeching to a halt inches from his face. "A toy. You brats are full of worthless tricks." "Not worthless," Sasuke said from the boat. Suddenly, the Fuma Shuriken Zabuza was holding dispelled in a puff of smoke. In its place was Naruto, kunai in hand, appearing from the transformation jutsu in midair. "What?" Zabuza's eyes widened in genuine shock. A clone hidden within a transformed weapon. It was a brilliant, unorthodox tactic. Naruto threw the kunai, not at Zabuza's face, but at his hand, the one maintaining the water prison. Zabuza was forced to choose. Let the kunai pierce his hand, potentially breaking his control, or let go of the prison to dodge. He yanked his hand back, the kunai skimming past his knuckles. The sphere of water collapsed, and Kakashi was free. "I told you," Naruto said, landing on the water with a splash. "It's all about deception." Kakashi exploded into action the moment he was free. He and Zabuza were a blur of motion, a taijutsu battle on the water's surface that was so fast the genin could barely follow. But Kakashi had seen everything. He had seen his students. His brand new, fresh out of the academy students, formulate and execute a flawless plan to save his life. A fire had been lit in him. "You made a mistake, Zabuza," Kakashi said, his voice dangerously low as he blocked a strike from the executioner's blade. "You threatened my students." The Sharingan in his eye spun, locking onto Zabuza's hands as the mist nin began to form a complex series of hand signs for a powerful jutsu. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. Zabuza yelled, a massive dragon of swirling water rising from the lake. But Kakashi's hands were moving in perfect sync, a mirror image. He finished the signs a fraction of a second before Zabuza. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. An identical dragon of water rose up to meet Zabuza's. The two massive constructs crashed into each other, sending a monumental wave washing over the entire area, nearly swamping the boat. The genin could only stare in awe. "How?" Zabuza sputtered, his confidence finally cracking. He copied my technique perfectly, before I even finished it." "It's over, Zabuza," Kakashi said, appearing behind him as if from nowhere. "Your future is death." Before Kakashi could deliver the final blow, two Senbon needles shot out of the mist, embedding themselves in Zabuza's neck. The demon of the mist stiffened, his eyes wide, and then collapsed, falling to the water like a puppet with its strings cut. A new figure appeared on a nearby tree branch. They were small, slender, wearing the standard uniform of a hidden mist hunter nin and a white mask with curved red lines. Their build was slight, their voice light and feminine, though it was impossible to be sure of their gender. "You were right," the hunter nin said in a calm, melodic voice, bowing towards Kakashi. "He was my target. Thank you for your assistance." Quote. The hunter nin flickered down, hoisted Zabuza's seemingly lifeless body over their shoulder as if he weighed nothing, and then vanished in a swirl of mist and leaves. The fight was over. The oppressive killing intent was gone. The mist began to recede. But Naruto's observed skill told him a different story. Name: Haku disguised. Level: Title: Shinobi of the Ice Clan. Disposition: Deceptive. Loyal to Zabuza Momochi. The system didn't register Zabuza as dead, and it saw through the hunter nin's disguise. He looked at Kakashi, who was swaying on his feet, the use of the Sharingan clearly having taken a massive toll. "Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said, his voice low. "That was a fake." Kakashi looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Hunter nin are supposed to destroy the body on sight, to prevent village secrets from being taken. He took the body with him. And those Senbon needles, they're for inducing a temporary, death-like state, not for killing. Zabuza is still alive." Kakashi stared at Naruto, his visible eye wide with a mixture of shock and pride. The boy was right. He had been so focused on the battle, so drained by the Sharingan, that he had missed the subtle details. "You," Kakashi started, and then his legs gave out, and he collapsed. They managed to get Kakashi and Tazuna to the bridge builder's small, simple home. Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, a kind woman with a perpetually worried expression, immediately set about making them comfortable and tending to their sensei. Kakashi awoke a few hours later, confined to a futon. "Well, as Naruto correctly deduced, Zabuza is still alive," he said, addressing his team, who were gathered around him. The hunter nin was his accomplice. "They'll be back, likely in a week, once Zabuza has recovered. We have to be ready." He looked at his students. They had faced an S-rank ninja and survived. They had worked as a team and saved his life. But they had also seen the vast, terrifying gap between a genin and a true elite. "We're going to train," Kakashi said. "I'm going to teach you how to climb trees." Sakura and Sasuke looked at him as if he were insane. "Climb trees," Sakura repeated. "We already know how to do that." "No," Kakashi said, his eye curving into a smile. "You don't. Not without using your hands." He explained the chakra control exercise, the same one Naruto and Hinata had practiced. It was the key to mastering more advanced jutsu. It was the foundation of everything. They spent the rest of the day in a clearing in the woods near Tazuna's house. As Kakashi had predicted, Sakura, with her naturally precise chakra control, mastered it first. After only a few tries, She was able to walk straight up a tree trunk and stand on a branch, looking down at the boys with a triumphant, smug grin. It was the first time she had ever bested Sasuke at a practical ninja skill, and the boost to her confidence was palpable. Sasuke, his pride stung, attacked the exercise with a ferocious intensity. He was powerful, but his control was less refined than Sakura's. He would get halfway up, blast a chunk of bark off the tree with too much chakra, and fall. He would land, scowl, and immediately try again, his Sharingan activating in his frustration as he tried to visualize the chakra flow. Naruto had the opposite problem. He had more chakra than anyone, thanks to the 9 tails. But it was like trying to fill a thimble with a fire hose. His control was abysmal. He'd run at the tree, and the moment his foot made contact, a massive surge of chakra would explode from his soul, launching him backward 10 feet and leaving a crater in the tree trunk. Due to chaotic and overwhelming chakra output, your skill, chakra control, has failed to level up. -1 HP, blunt force trauma. This notification repeated itself over and over. He slammed into the ground, picked himself up, and tried again, each failure a frustrating, painful dead end. Later that evening, sore and covered in dirt, Naruto sat on the porch of Tezuna's house, staring at the unfinished bridge in the distance. He felt a small presence nearby and turned to see a little boy with a strange, patched hat glaring at him. This was Inari, Tezuna's grandson. "You're going to die," Inari said, his voice flat and empty. Naruto blinked. "Well, that's a cheerful greeting. You can't beat Gato," the boy continued, his small fists clenched. "No one can. All this training is useless. All heroes are dead. There's no such thing as a hero." Naruto used observe. Name: Inari. Level: 1. Title: Grieving Child. Disposition: depressed, hopeless. Thoughts: these ninja are just going to get killed like Kaiza did. Believing in them is stupid. It only hurts when they die. Kaiza. The name felt important. Naruto didn't try to argue with the boy. He didn't offer a platitude or a confident boast. His charisma wasn't about overpowering people, it was about connecting with them. "Someone you cared about died, didn't they?" Naruto asked softly. "They tried to be a hero, and they were killed for it." Inari's eyes widened, tears welling up. He hadn't expected understanding. He had expected a lecture. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. "Crying doesn't make you a hero," Naruto said, his voice still gentle. "And running away from a fight doesn't make you safe. All it does is let the bad guys win. Being a hero means that even when you're scared, even when you're crying, you still stand up and fight for the people you want to protect." He stood up and looked back towards the forest. "I'm going to keep training. Not because I think I can't lose, but because there are people I'm not willing to lose." He walked back to the training ground, leaving a stunned Inari staring after him. Night fell, but Naruto didn't stop. Under the moonlight, he continued his assault on the tree. Failure after failure. He was missing something, some fundamental piece of the puzzle. He pulled up his system interface, looking at his skills, his stats, trying to find a solution. He had brute force. He had stamina. He needed finesse. He thought back to Hinata. How had she managed it? She had been afraid of falling, so he'd told her to look up. He had been so focused on the explosion of chakra at his feet, he hadn't been thinking about his goal at all. He took a deep breath, letting the calm of Gamer's mind settle over him. He closed his eyes, visualizing not the chakra in his feet, but a small, steady platform of energy just beneath his soles. He didn't try to force it. He guided it. He ran at the tree, and this time, there was no explosion. His foot stuck. It was unsteady, wobbling, but it held. He took another step, and another. He was doing it. He walked 10 feet up the trunk and, with a final surge of effort, pushed off, flipping backward and landing on his feet. Through analysis and a shift in perspective, you have achieved a breakthrough. Skill, chakra control, has leveled up. X5. A triumphant grin split his face. He looked over and saw Sasuke, perched on a branch high above him, looking down with a mixture of annoyance and respect. They had both made it. They locked eyes across the clearing, the unspoken challenge passing between them. They weren't just teammates. They were rivals, and they were getting stronger by the second. The wind picked up, carrying a familiar, chill, Ling missed from the direction of the bridge. It was thin, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A promise. They were coming back. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Storm on the Bridge. The week that followed was a strange combination of grueling work and tense anticipation. Every morning, the mist would roll in from the sea, a little thicker, a little colder, a silent promise from the demon of the mist. It served as the perfect motivator. Team 7 trained with a desperate, focused intensity that Kakashi had rarely seen, even in seasoned Chunin. The specter of Zabuza loomed over them, a final exam for which failure was not an option. The clearing they used had become a testament to their efforts. The tree trunks were scarred with kunai marks and craters from their repeated, explosive failures in chakra control. Now, however, those same trunks were their playground. Naruto and Sasuke would race to the highest branches, their rivalry a palpable force that drove them both past their limits. They didn't speak of it, but an unspoken competition had begun. Who could get to the top first? Who could stay up the longest while dodging projectiles? Who could leap from one branch to another, 100 feet in the air? With the most precision, Kakashi would watch them, his single eye taking it all in. He saw Sasuke, the prodigy, forced to work for his strength for the first time, his Sharingan flaring not with rage, but with intense concentration as he tried to copy and dissect Naruto's unpredictable movements. He saw Naruto, the dead last, fueled by a bottomless well of chakra and an unbreakable will. His every action now guided by a startlingly sharp tactical mind. The system was his secret weapon, allowing him to analyze his own failures and convert them into experience points, turning every mistake into a stepping stone. Sakura, for her part, had found her own path. She had mastered the tree climbing exercise first, a fact she lorded over the boys with a newfound, playful confidence. But she didn't stop there. While they competed in feats of agility, she sat beneath a tree, her eyes closed in concentration, manipulating leaves with her chakra, making them spin and dance. She was honing her control to a razor's edge, practicing the minute manipulations that were the foundation of medical ninjutsu. Your teamwork is still sloppy, Kakashi announced one afternoon, appearing on a branch above them as Naruto and Sasuke concluded a particularly vicious taijutsu spar that had ended in a draw. You're strong individually, but you move as 3 separate units. A real team is a single organism. You must learn to anticipate each other's actions without a single word. He tossed down 3 small bells, identical to the ones from their first test. The exercise is the same. Get these bells. Only this time, I won't be holding back as much. What followed was a master class in humility. For 2 hours, they were utterly, comprehensively dismantled. Kakashi was a ghost, a phantom. They couldn't touch him. Their individual attacks were useless, their combination attempts clumsy and easily countered. He used their own momentum against them, turning Sasuke's charge into a collision with Naruto. Using Sakura's well-placed trap to ensnare her own teammates. Finally, they lay panting in the dirt, bruised and exhausted. See, Kakashi said, still not breathing heavily. 3 arrows are easily broken one at a time. Bundled together, they are strong. You are not a bundle yet. You are just 3 arrows lying next to each other. Naruto pushed himself up, spitting out a mouthful of dirt. He used observe. His teammates were both running on fumes, their HP and CP in the red. But his own were still well over half. The Jinchuriki title was a monstrous advantage. Again, Naruto said, his voice a low growl. Sasuke looked at him, then got to his feet, a flicker of his rival's same insane determination in his eyes. Sakura, groaning, pushed herself up as well. This time, Naruto didn't just charge. He stopped, holding up a hand. Wait, huddle. They gathered, and Naruto spoke in a low, urgent whisper. He wasn't suggesting a complex strategy. He was establishing a simple, unbreakable rule. A protocol. Sakura, you're the brain. You stay back, watch everything, and call out openings. Don't engage directly. Sasuke, you're the blade. You only strike when Sakura gives the signal. I'm the shield. I'm the distraction. I'll keep his attention. I'll take the hits. My only job is to create the opening for you. No matter what happens, we stick to that. No improvising. No glory hogging. He looked at each of them. His gaze intense. His leadership skill, though still low level, gave his words a natural gravity. They nodded. They engaged again. And this time, it was different. Naruto created 100 clones. A chaotic, swarming wall of orange that Kakashi had to wade through. They weren't meant to land a single hit. They were just noise, a living smokescreen. Naruto, the real one, stayed in the thick of it, deliberately taking hits from Kakashi that dispelled his clones, using his own body as a lure. His left side is open for a half-second after he uses the substitution jutsu. Sakura's voice called out from the trees. The moment Kakashi substituted with a log to avoid a pincer attack from 2 clones, Sasuke moved. He didn't charge wildly. He appeared exactly where Sakura had indicated. A kunai flashing towards Kakashi's unprotected side. Kakashi was forced to block, his arm jarring from the unexpectedly precise strike. And in that split second of contact, Naruto, who had been downed by Kakashi a moment earlier, shot up from the ground. Not the real Naruto, but a clone that had played possum, and his hand snaked out, fingers brushing against a bell. He didn't get it. Kakashi twisted away, and the clone dispelled, but it was the closest they had come. The jingle of the bell echoed in the clearing. They stood there, breathing heavily, a single, cohesive unit. Kakashi's visible eye was wide. He lowered his stance. Not bad, he said, and this time, the praise was genuine. Not bad at all. That evening, Naruto walked into the small, impoverished village of the Wave Country with Tsunami. The change in atmosphere from their training ground was jarring. Here, there was no fire, no hope. The streets were muddy, the buildings dilapidated. Gato's thugs, a collection of brutish samurai and mercenaries, swaggered through the town square, kicking over merchant stalls and harassing the few people brave enough to be outside. The villagers averted their eyes. Their shoulders slumped in a permanent posture of defeat. Naruto saw 2 of the thugs corner a woman who had dropped a basket of apples. They laughed as they kicked the fruit into the mud, demanding payment for the mess. The old Naruto would have charged in, fists flying. But his int and wits, though still not prodigy level, were high enough to understand the bigger picture. Beating up 2 thugs would feel good for a moment, but it would only bring more of Gato's wrath down on these people. He couldn't win their war for them. He had to show them how to fight it themselves. He walked forward calmly, his hands in his pockets. He didn't look at the thugs. He looked at the woman on the ground, and offered her a hand. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and clear. His charisma wasn't a wave of force. It was a steady, warm light in the oppressive gloom. The thugs turned to him, sneering. "Well, look what we have here. A little leaf ninja playing hero. Get lost, kid, this ain't your business." Naruto helped the woman to her feet, then began picking up the salvaged apples, wiping the mud off on his pants. He still didn't look at the thugs. He looked at the half-dozen villagers who were watching from the shadows of their doorways, their faces etched with fear. "It is my business," Naruto said, his voice carrying through the quiet square. "My team was hired to protect He man who is building the bridge that will free you from these cowards. A bridge is built 1 plank at a time. A village is saved 1 person at a time. It starts with something as simple as picking up an apple." He handed an apple to the woman, then looked directly at the watching villagers. "Or are you all content to live on your knees, watching your neighbors get kicked while you do nothing?" His words were a direct challenge. Not to the thugs, but to the villagers themselves. The thugs, enraged at being ignored, drew their swords. "You've got a big mouth, kid," one of them snarled, lunging forward. He never got the chance to swing. A kunai whistled through the air and embedded itself in the ground an inch from his foot. Sasuke was perched on a nearby roof, his expression one of utter boredom. Sakura was standing beside Tsunami, her hand in a half-formed seal, ready to act. They had followed him. The thugs froze, looking from the genin to the watching villagers, who for the first time were not averting their eyes. They were staring, a flicker of something long dormant in their expressions. Shame, anger, hope. Outnumbered and unnerved, the thugs backed away, spitting curses before disappearing down an alley. Naruto didn't say another word. He just finished picking up the apples and then walked away with his team. He had planted a seed. Now he just had to wait and see if it would grow. The morning of the 7th day arrived. The mist was so thick it felt like the world had ended at the shoreline. It clung to the house, muffling all sound. This was the day. Tazuna stood at the door, his tools in his hands. I'm going to the bridge. It's too dangerous, Tsunami pleaded. Wait for them to leave. No, Tazuna said, his voice firm. I've hidden in fear long enough. I ed these kids to protect me while I work. So I'm going to work. Kakashi, leaning on the doorframe, nodded. We'll go with you. The walk to the bridge was an eerie, silent procession. The half-finish, Ed's structure rose out of the mist like the skeleton of some colossal beast. The only sound was the lapping of the water and the rhythmic thump of Tazuna's tools against his leg. They found the work crew, a dozen men, lying unconscious on the bridge, scattered amongst their tools. Zabuza, Kakashi breathed. So, you came, a voice called out, and Zabuza materialized from the mist at the far end of the bridge. His executioner's blade resting on his shoulder. Beside him stood the hunter Nin, Haku, his white mask a blank, emotionless stare. I see you've brought the brats again, Kakashi. I hope why. Oh, we're not planning on another pathetic rescue. Funny, Kakashi said, pulling up his headband to reveal the Sharingan. I was about to say the same thing to you. He turned to his team. This is my fight. You three, protect Tazuna. That's your only priority. This is a battle between elites. Do not interfere. He flickered forward, and the battle began. It was nothing like their first encounter. There were no tricks, no water prisons. This was a high-speed, lethal exchange of steel and jutsu. Clones of water and lightning clashed, shuriken filled the air, the roar of a water dragon was met with the crackle of a lightning blade. It was a storm of violence that the genin could barely comprehend. While Kakashi and Zabuza were locked in their deadly dance, Haku moved. He flowed across the bridge, a silent, graceful blur aimed directly at Tazuna. I don't think so, Sasuke said, appearing in Haku's path, a kunai in his hand. Your fight is with me. Haku stopped, tilting his masked head. The boy with the dark eyes. You have potential, but you are still just a seed. I am a tree in full bloom. You cannot win. We'll see about that, Sasuke replied, and charged. What followed was a battle of pure speed. Haku moved like a hummingbird, flitting from place to place, a constant barrage of Senbon needles flying from his fingertips. Sasuke, his Sharingan spinning, was a whirlwind of motion, dodging, deflecting, countering. He could see the needles, he could track Haku's movements, but the sheer velocity was on another level. For every move he made, Haku made three. Naruto and Sakura formed a protective wall around Tazuna, their eyes darting between the two incredible fights happening simultaneously. Naruto could see through his skill that Sasuke was being overwhelmed. His HP was dropping steadily from a dozen small cuts, and his chakra was draining rapidly from the sustained use of the Sharingan. Sakura, stay with Tazuna, no matter what. Naruto yelled, and then he was gone. A blur of orange rocketing towards the second fight. He wasn't going to let his teammate fall. He appeared with a flying kick aimed at Haku's side, forcing the masked ninja to disengage from Sasuke. You again, Haku said, his voice still infuriatingly calm. The boy with the monstrous chakra. It seems you need to be taught a lesson in your own powerlessness. Haku made a single, elegant hand sign. Secret jutsu. 1,000 years of death. No, that wasn't it. The air around them dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Frost began to creep across the metal girders of the bridge. Secret jutsu. Crystal ice mirrors. Thin, perfectly rectangular mirrors of ice erupted from the bridge, surrounding Naruto and Sasuke. They rose up, forming a dome of 21 shimmering, frozen surfaces. The real Haku stepped into one of the mirrors, and his reflection appeared in all the others. Now, it begins, Haku's voice echoed from every direction. I will show you the meaning of speed. He vanished from the original mirror. His reflection in another one moved, and a volley of Senbon needles shot out, striking Naruto in the back. Before Naruto could even turn, another volley hit him from a different mirror. And another. It was impossible. Haku was everywhere at once, moving between the mirrors at a speed that defied physics. Naruto created a dozen clones, but they were dispatched in seconds. Unable to even locate the real target. Sasuke's Sharingan was useless. He could see Haku in every mirror, but the attacks came too fast, from too many angles. They were trapped in a pinball machine of death. They were being torn to shreds. Naruto's high VIT and regeneration kept him on his feet, his wounds healing almost as fast as they were made, but the pain was immense. Sasuke was not so lucky. He was slower, his body accumulating damage at an alarming rate. His black shirt was soaked in blood. Naruto. Sasuke gasped, stumbling to one knee. This guy, he's faster than Kakashi-sensei. I know, Naruto grunted, pulling a needle from his shoulder. His mind was racing, trying to find a flaw in the jutsu, a pattern, anything. But there was nothing. It was a perfect cage. Then he saw it. Haku, in his overconfidence, was preparing a final, massive volley. 100 needles appeared in the air around his reflections, all aimed at Naruto. A killing blow. But Sasuke saw it too. His Sharingan, even through the haze of pain and exhaustion, saw the intent. He saw the trajectory, and he saw that Naruto, battered and off balance, wouldn't be able to dodge in time. In that instant, Sasuke didn't think about his clan. He didn't think about his revenge. He didn't think about his rivalry with Naruto. He just moved. He threw himself in front of Naruto, a human shield. The sound of a NDRED needles piercing flesh was sickeningly quiet. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. Sasuke stood there for a long second, his body a pincushion, his eyes wide with shock. A small, bloody smile touched his lips. Hey, funny, Sasuke coughed, blood trickling from his mouth. My body, it just moved on its own, loser. He collapsed onto the hard steel of the bridge, his Sharingan fading to black. He didn't move. Silence. Naruto stared at the still form of his teammate, his rival, his friend. The system, the calm, logical fortress of Gamer's mind, began to overload. He could feel it cracking, the emotional data becoming too vast. Too powerful to process. Sasuke is dead. The thought was a catastrophic error in the code of his world. Critical emotional trauma detected. System integrity compromised. Protocol. Gamer's mind LVL. Max failed. Initiating emergency protocol. Activating dormant power source. Warning. Seal integrity at 12%. Containment failure imminent. A red, malevolent chakra, thick as blood, erupted from Naruto's body. It was an explosion of pure, undiluted rage. The air around him shimmered with heat. The Senbon needles embedded in his skin were incinerated, his wounds steaming and vanishing in an instant. His blue eyes bled into a demonic crimson, his pupils contracting into sharp slits. The whisker marks on his cheeks darkened, becoming jagged and feral. Haku, watching from his mirrors, felt a primal terror he had never known. The boy was no longer human. The chakra pouring off him was ancient, hateful, and impossibly powerful. It was the chakra of a tailed beast. Naruto slowly lifted his head. He looked at Haku, his gaze filled with a bottomless, world-ending fury. A low growl rumbled in his chest, and it escalated into a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the bridge. It was the sound of a cage breaking. It was the sound of a demon, awakened. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The roar of the demon, the heart of the man. The world did not fade to black. It burned red. The intricate architecture of the gamer's mind, the calm, logical fortress that had become Naruto's reality, shattered into a million screaming fragments. The system notifications that flickered at the edge of his vision were no longer helpful blue boxes of data. They were searing, crimson error messages, a cascade of system failures that spoke of a catastrophic meltdown. The pain of Sasuke's sacrifice wasn't a number to be processed, a status effect to be resisted. It was a reality that broke the game. Error, emotional input exceeds processing capacity. System kernel panic. Gamer's mind protocol, offline. And in the silence that followed the system's crash, something ancient and infinitely powerful, something that had been chained in the deepest dungeon of his soul, awoke. The chakra that erupted from Naruto was not his own. His was the vibrant, hopeful blue of a summer sky. This was a thick, viscous crimson, a malevolent energy that felt dredged up hatred and millennia of caged fury. It coated him in a bubbling, seething aura, a liquid fire that healed his wounds with an audible hiss, incinerating the Senbon needles embedded in skin and cauterizing the flesh beneath in an instant. His senses, once filtered through the observed skill, were now overwhelmed by raw, predatory input. He could smell the ozone tang of Haku's ice, the coppery scent of Sasuke's blood. The sharp, clean terror radiating from the masked ninja. He could feel the vibrations of the bridge under his feet, the thrumming of two titanic battles raging at the far end, the frantic, terrified heartbeat of Sakura as she guarded Tizuna. Haku watched from the safety of his mirrors, and for the first time in his life, he felt a cold, primal fear that had nothing to do with the chill of his own ice. The boy before him was no longer a boy. The chakra signature was monstrous, an apocalyptic cataclysm crammed into the shape of a child. His own refined, elegant power felt like a snowflake in a volcano. What are you? Haku's voice, for the first time, was not calm. It trembled. Naruto didn't answer with words. He answered with a roar. It was not a human sound. It was the bellow of a caged god, a sound that ripped through the mist and shook the bridge to its foundations. Even Kakashi and Zabuza, locked in their own life or death struggle, faltered for a second. Their heads snapping towards the impossible sound and the tidal wave of demonic chakra that washed over them. Naruto charged. He didn't run. He was a projectile, a crimson comet that slammed into the nearest ice mirror. He didn't use a jutsu, didn't focus his chakra into a punch. He simply impacted it with the sheer, overwhelming force of his new power. The mirror, which had effortlessly deflected Kunai and Sasuke's fire jutsu, did not just crack. It exploded. It atomized into a cloud of glittering dust. Haku's eyes widened behind his mask. The jutsu was his life's work, his ultimate defense and offense. It was supposed to be unbreakable. From within the dome, Haku's reflections moved as one, launching a torrential downpour of Senbon from every angle. 1,000 needles, each aimed with lethal precision. It was the attack that had brought down Sasuke. Naruto didn't dodge. He didn't need to. The red chakra aura around him solidified into a tangible shield, and the needles either melted into slag a foot from his body or ricocheted off with pathetic, metallic pings. He ignored them completely, his crimson eyes locking onto another mirror. He slammed his fist into it, and it, too, disintegrated. Impossible. Haku cried out, his reflections flickering. The game had changed. Naruto was no longer the mouse in the maze. He was the wrecking ball. He moved with a feral, terrifying grace. His movements no longer based on the academy taijutsu he had been practicing. He was pure instinct, a predator hunting its prey. He leapt from one surface to another, a blur of red and orange, and with every punch, another mirror was annihilated. The dome, once a perfect, inescapable cage, was being systematically demolished. Haku tried to fight back, moving between the remaining mirrors to attack Naruto's blind spots, but it was useless. The boy, the monster, seemed to have a 360-degree awareness, his head snapping around to meet every attack before it even landed, his slitted crimson eyes filled with nothing but murderous intent. Only 3 mirrors remained. Haku, his chakra draining rapidly, his mind reeling from the sheer impossibility of what was happening, consolidated his being into the mirror directly in front of Naruto. He had to end this. Now, he poured the last of his reserves into a final, desperate attack, appearing in a flash of speed directly in front of the rampaging Jinchuriki, his hand glowing with a frosty blue chakra, aimed at Naruto's heart. He was too slow. Naruto's fist, wreathed in the Nine Tails chakra, was a blur. It met Haku square in the chest. It wasn't a punch designed to disable. It was a punch designed to obliterate. Haku felt his ribs crack, the force of the blow lifting him off his feet and sending him flying backward. He slammed through his own ice mirror, shattering it, and then tumbled across the hard steel of the bridge, his body a broken wreck. The Hunter Nin mask, his last layer of defense, the identity he had hidden behind for so long, cracked down the middle and fell away in 2 pieces. Naruto landed, his knuckles steaming, and stalked forward to finish the job. He stood over the downed ninja, raising his fist for the final, crushing blow. And then he stopped. The face that looked up at him was not the face of a monster. It was the face of a boy, no older than himself. A boy with delicate features, long dark hair, and large brown eyes that were filled not with hatred, but with a profound, soul-deep sadness. Tears welled in those eyes, tracing clean paths through the grime and blood on his cheeks. He He image was a discordant note in the symphony of his rage. A boy, just a boy. The crimson chakra around him wavered. A flicker of blue, his own true self, fought to break through the demonic shroud. His raised fist trembled. Why? Naruto's voice was a guttural growl, a mixture of his own and something deeper, darker. Why did you kill him? He was my friend. Haku coughed, a spray of blood coloring his lips. He looked at Naruto, at the demonic power swirling around him, and he saw not a monster, but a kindred spirit. A boy who had been made into a weapon, just like him. I did it, for Zabuza-sama, Haku whispered. His voice weak. He is the one who gave me a purpose. When you have someone you truly want to protect, that is when you can become truly strong. I am Zabuza-sama's tool. My only purpose is to help him achieve his dream. Even if it means I must become a demon. The words pierced through Naruto's rage-addled mind. Purpose, protect, acknowledged. They were the same word. That formed the foundation of his own life, his own dream. He stared at the boy, and in his tear-filled eyes, he saw his own reflection, the lonely child desperate for a bond, willing to do anything. For the first person who saw him not as a monster, but as a person. The crimson chakra receded from his eyes, the feral slits widening back into human blue. The seething red aura around him calmed, cooling back into his body like a retreating tide. The system, which had been dark and silent, flickered back to life with a single, crucial notification. Empathetic resonance detected. Forcing system reboot. Gamer's mind protocol, re-engaging. The rage was still there, a hot coil in his stomach, but the calm returned, a welcome blanket of logic that allowed him to think again. He looked at Sasuke's still form, then back at Haku. To become a tool, to kill your own heart just to be useful to someone, Naruto said, his voice now his own, though it was thick with a sorrow that was years older than he was. That's not strength. That's just the saddest thing in the world. Before Haku could respond, a massive flare of chakra from the other end of the bridge drew their attention. The mist had cleared enough for them to see. Zabuza was on his knees, his body covered in cuts. Kakashi stood over him, his hand crackling with a blinding white lightning that chirped and screamed like 1,000 birds. The Chidori, it's over. Zabuza, Kakashi said, his voice carrying across the bridge. Zabuza laughed, a bloody, broken sound. So this is it, Kakashi. You and your Sharingan, you truly can see the future. No, Kakashi replied, the lightning in his hand intensifying. But I can see your end. He charged, a bolt of white lightning aimed at Zabuza's heart. Haku's eyes widened. Zabuza-sama. With a surge of strength born of pure devotion, Haku was on his feet. He flickered across the bridge, a movement so fast it seemed he had teleported. He appeared between Kakashi and Zabuza, his arms spread wide. Kakashi's eyes widened in horror. He couldn't stop. His momentum was too great, his jutsu too focused. His lightning-wreathed hand plunged through Haku's chest. There was a sickening, wet thud. The chirping of the Chidori died. Haku's body went limp, his head slumping forward onto Kakashi's shoulder. His hand, slick with his own blood, reached up and grabbed Kakashi's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. A final act of a tool, ensuring the weapon that killed it could not be used against its master. Zabuza stared, his eyes wide with shock. Haku, his perfect, loyal weapon, had made the ultimate sacrifice. He had intercepted the killing blow. Silence descended upon the bridge, broken only by the drip of blood onto the steel below. And then, a slow, sarcastic clap echoed from the far end of the bridge. A short, stout man in a ridiculously expensive suit and sunglasses, flanked by over 100 thugs, samurai, and mercenaries, walked out of the mist. It was Gato, and he was beaming. Bravo! What a touching scene, Gato said, laughing. You ninja are always so full of drama. Well, I guess I don't have to pay you now, Zabuza. You're a bit of a failure, aren't you? Hiring a little kid to fight for you, how pathetic. He walked over to Haku's lifeless body, still impaled on Kakashi's arm, and kicked it contemptuously. And this one is even more pathetic. Breaking so easily. What a useless tool. Something in Naruto snapped again, but this time it wasn't the Kyuubi's rage. It was his own. You bastard, take that back. Zabuza, however, just laughed, a hollow, empty sound. You heard him, Kid. Haku is dead. Just another broken tool. Why should I care? You're lying, Naruto said, his voice trembling with fury as he pointed a finger at the demon of the mist. You do care. You're just afraid to admit it. He lived for you. He died for you. His dream was to see you succeed. And for you to say he was nothing, to let this scum spit on his sacrifice, it makes you a monster. Naruto was crying now, hot tears of rage and sorrow streaming down his face. He loved you. He loved you more than anything. Zabuza was silent. His shoulders trembled. He slowly reached up and tore the bandages from his face, revealing a man with sharp, angular features and eyes that were surprisingly human. And from those eyes, a single tear escaped, tracing a path down his cheek. You talk too much, kid, Zabuza said, his voice thick and choked. Your words, they cut deeper than any blade. He turned his gaze from Haku to Gato, and the look in his eyes was no longer that of a shinobi. It was the look of a man who had lost everything, and had nothing left to lose. Your words are true. The ninja known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist died a long time ago. Now, it's just me. He turned to Naruto. Kid, lend me your kunai. Naruto hesitated, then pulled a kunai from his pouch and tossed it. Zabuza's arms had been disabled by Kakashi earlier in the fight, so he caught the blade in his teeth. He looked at Gato and his army of thugs, and a demonic, blood-soaked aura, his own killing intent, erupted from his body. He charged. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Zabuza, with no jutsu, with no use of his arms, became a human hurricane of vengeance. He moved through the crowd of thugs, the kunai in his mouth a flashing instrument of death. He tore out throats, severed arteries, and plunged the blade into eye sockets. He was stabbed a dozen times, spears and swords piercing his back and legs, but he didn't stop. He was fueled by a grief so profound that it had become its own form of power. The thugs screamed and broke, scrambling to get away from the dying, blood-crazed demon. Zabuza ignored them, his eyes locked on his one true target. He burst through the last line of bodyguards and slammed into Gato, the kunai plunging deep into the fat man's chest. Demons don't go to the same heaven as angels like you, Haku, Zabuza gargled, blood pouring from his mouth as he twisted the blade. But if I can, I'd like to join you where you are. He pushed, and they both tumbled over the side of the bridge, falling into the mist-shrouded water below. The remaining thugs, leaderless and terrified, turned their attention to the exhausted ninja and the bridge builder. They still had the numbers. They could still win. It's not over. One of them yelled, "Get them!" They started to advance, a ragged, ugly mob. Stop. The voice was small, but it cut through the air. At the village end of the bridge stood Inari, clutching a fishing spear, his small body trembling with fear. But his eyes blazing with a newfound fire. Behind him stood his mother, Tsunami. And behind them was the entire village. Fishermen with harpoons, carpenters with hammers, women with kitchen knives, an army of ordinary people who had decided they were done being afraid. This is our bridge, Inari yelled, his voice cracking but full of conviction. This is our home, and we will fight for it. The villagers let out a collective roar of defiance. The thugs, who were only brave when their victims were afraid, faltered. They looked at the exhausted ninja, at the enraged demon who had just taken their boss to a watery grave, and at the wall of determined villagers. Their nerve broke completely. They turned and fled, their retreat a chaotic, cowardly scramble. The battle was over. As if on cue, a soft, white snow began to fall, an unseasonal, gentle blanket that seemed to wash the blood from the bridge. Kakashi had managed to retrieve Zabuza's body from the water. The demon lay on the bridge, his life fading. A dozen mortal wounds covering his body. Kid, Zabuza rasped, looking at Naruto. Take me to him. I want to see his face, one last time. Naruto nodded, gently lifting the dying man and carrying him over to where Haku lay. He laid Zabuza down beside his loyal companion. Thank you, kid, Zabuza whispered, reaching out a trembling, blood-soaked hand to touch Haku's cheek. You were always at my side. The least I can do is be at yours in the end. Haku, it is snowing. Is it you? Are you crying? And with that, Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist, died. Naruto stood there, watching the snow fall on the two fallen ninja, a storm of emotions warring inside him. Grief, victory, anger, understanding. He looked over at Sasuke's body, the cause of it all, and the pain returned. Sharp and fresh. He's not dead, you know. Naruto's head snapped up. Kakashi was standing beside Sasuke, his hand on the boy's neck. The needles Haku used were designed to simulate death. To strike non-vital acupressure points and induce a temporary coma, Kakashi explained, his voice soft. It's the same technique the hunter nin used on Zabuza. Sasuke is alive, just unconscious. The relief that washed over Naruto was so powerful his knees buckled. It was a physical weight being lifted from his soul. Sasuke was alive, he hadn't failed him. And as that final, critical piece of emotional data was processed, the system, which had been struggling to reboot, finally came back online with a powerful, chiming hum. System recovery complete. Gamer's mind has been recalibrated from critical failure. New sub-skill acquired. Skill created. Mind's Fortress passive integrates emotional responses with logical processing. Grants high resistance to psychological collapse, mental domination, and emotional manipulation. Prevents loss of user control during high-stress events. Quest completed. The Demon on the Bridge. Objective. Survive the encounter with Zabuza and Haku. Complete. Rewards. 20,000 XP. 50 stat points. Title, The One Who Connects Hearts. You have leveled up. X5. You are now level 12. You have gained 25 stat points. Total stat points to allocate. 75. Naruto stared at the notifications, at the massive influx of power and the new skill that promised he would never lose himself like that again. He had faced a demon, an angel, and the monster inside himself. He had lost a friend and gotten him back. He looked at the bodies of Zabuza and Haku, then at his own teammates, alive and safe. He looked at Tazuna and the villagers, their FACES filled with hope for the first time in years. He had survived, and he was stronger for it. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Valley of the End and a Parting of Ways. The salt spray of the ocean felt different now. A week ago, it had been a harbinger of mist and death. Today, it was just the sea, a vast, blue canvas under a brilliant, cloudless sky. Team 7 stood at the entrance to the bridge, the magnificent structure now bustling with life. Merchants with carts, villagers carrying lumber, and children laughing and chasing each other across the planks. The air, once thick with despair, was now filled with the sounds of construction and commerce. The sound of hope. An old, familiar voice cut through the noise. Oi, you brats leaving without saying goodbye. Tazuna strode towards them, a wide, genuine grin on his face. He looked 10 years younger. Beside him, Inari clutched a small, crudely carved wooden bird. We came to see you off, Tazuna said, clapping Naruto on the shoulder. The whole village wanted to. But I told them not to make a fuss. You ninja are supposed to be sneaky, right? Naruto grinned back. Something like that. He knelt down to look Inari in the eye. The boy's gaze was no longer empty. It was bright, filled with a fierce, childish determination. I'm gonna get strong, Inari announced, puffing out his chest. Strong enough to protect everyone. Just like you. He thrust the wooden bird into Naruto's hands. Here, so you don't forget us. Naruto examined the carving. It was rough, but he could see the care that had gone into it. He closed his hand around it. I won't. We've decided on a name for the bridge, Tazuna said, his voice thick with emotion as he looked at the sprawling structure. To honor the ninja who fought for us, who cried for us, and who taught us to fight for ourselves. We're calling it the Great Naruto Bridge. Naruto's breath hitched. He looked from the bridge to the villagers, at their smiling, grateful faces. A warmth spread rough his chest that had nothing to do with the game system. It was the feeling of a connection forged, a bond created. It was the feeling of being a hero. World event. The Great Naruto Bridge has been named. Your reputation in the Land of Waves is now legendary. Title equipped. The One Who Connects Hearts passively increases the growth of positive relationships. Greatly enhances the effectiveness of persuasive and inspirational speech. He had 75 stat points to allocate. The battle with Haku had shown him that raw power wasn't enough. He needed speed, precision, and the intelligence to wield his abilities effectively. He mentally distributed the points, feeling a subtle but immediate shift as the system confirmed his choices. STR, 5 to 20. VIT, 25 to 40. Dex, 12 to 40. Int, 14 to 20. Wis, 13 to 20. His physical stats were now solidly in the Chunin range, and his mental stats would allow him to learn and process information at a much faster rate. He was no longer just a tank, he was becoming a true frontline fighter. The journey back to Konoha was quiet. Sasuke walked beside him, his arm in a sling, his expression thoughtful. He had woken up with a full memory of the fight, of his own sacrifice, and of Naruto's terrifying transformation. There was no mockery in his eyes, no condescension. There was a new, complex respect. He had seen the demon inside Naruto, and he had so seen the boy who had wept for an enemy. He didn't understand it, but he respected it. Kakashi walked behind them, his single eye observing his team. They were different. The wave mission had been a crucible, and it had forged them into something new. The bickering, dysfunctional trio he had taken on was gone. In its place was a unit, bound together by shared trauma and mutual respect. And at its core, holding it all together, was the impossible, unpredictable, charismatic force of nature that was Naruto Uzumaki. Their debriefing in the Hokage's office was concise. Kakashi gave a factual report, detailing the mission's escalation, Zabuza and Haku, Gato's death, and the team's performance. He didn't embellish, but the facts spoke for themselves. When he got to the part about Sasuke's Appa, Rent death and Naruto's subsequent chakra eruption, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Hiruzen Sarutobi listened, his hands steepled, his gaze heavy. He looked at Naruto, a deep, ancient worry in his eyes. The seal held, Hiruzen said, more to himself than anyone else. But it was strained. Naruto, you must be careful. That power, it is not your own. I know, old man, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm. But it saved my friends. I won't be afraid of it. I'll control it. The Hokage nodded slowly, accepting the answer. He dismissed the genin, but asked Kakashi to stay behind. As Naruto left, he saw the grave expressions on the two men's faces. They were talking about him. About the cage inside him. Deep beneath the village, in a cold, stone chamber lit by a single flickering lamp. Danzo Shimura listened to a similar report from a root operative kneeling before him. The ninja, his face hidden by a blank white mask, recited the events on the bridge with chilling, emotionless detail. The Jinchuriki's power was overwhelming, the operative finished. He destroyed the Hyuga clan user's Kekkei Genkei with brute force and demonstrated regenerative abilities far exceeding baseline expectations. Furthermore, his words alone were able to sway the demon of the mist and incite an entire village to rebellion. His influence is dangerously potent. Danzo's one visible eye narrowed. Hiruzen is a sentimental fool. He sees Minato's legacy. I see a ticking bomb with the power to level nations and the charisma to command them. He is no longer a tool to be molded. He is a rival power growing within our own walls. He stood and walked to a darkened corner of the room, where a dozen more root shinobi stood in silent, perfect formation. The boy's bonds are his strength, Danzo mused, his voice a dry whisper. His team, his sensei, he believes in the will of fire. A fire that is not properly controlled will burn the village down. It is time we introduced a wedge. The UCHIHA boy, his heart is a fertile ground of pride and darkness. Nurture it, remind him of what he has lost, and show him the power he is owed. A broken team is a broken Jinchuriki. Hi, Danzo-sama, the ninja chorused, and melted back into the shadows. Sasuke stood at the Uchiha clan's personal training ground, staring at the scorch marks left by his own fire jutsu. They seemed pathetic. He remembered the overwhelming, soul-crushing power that had poured off Naruto. He had been training his whole life, honing the skills of a prodigy, and in the end, he had been nothing more than a shield. A fragile one, at that. The shame of it was a physical weight, heavier than any injury. How can I kill Itachi if I can't even surpass Naruto? The thought was a poison, seeping into the cracks of his resolve. Brooding won't make you stronger. Sasuke turned to see Kakashi leaning against a post, his ever-present book in hand. Naruto is different, Kakashi said, snapping his book shut. Don't measure yourself against him. He's playing by an entirely different set of rules. You, however, have a gift. The Sharingan, and a natural affinity for lightning. It's time I taught you something that is yours alone. He held up his hand. And with a surge of chakra, the familiar, deafening shriek of the Chidori filled the air. The blinding white lightning illuminated Sasuke's face, and in his dark eyes, Kakashi saw not just awe, but a desperate, hungry ambition. It was the look of a boy who would do anything for power, and Kakashi, with the best of intentions, was about to hand him a loaded gun. Sasuke began his grueling training to master the Chidori. Naruto chose a different path. He didn't go to a training ground. He went to the library. He now understood that knowledge was the foundation upon which all power was built. He presented his Hokage-issued pass and delved into the archives, his mind, enhanced by his new stats, absorbing information like a sponge. He focused on one specific area, elemental manipulation. He learned that every shinobi had a natural affinity, and through a simple test with chakra paper, he confirmed what he had suspected from the faint tingling he felt and he used his shadow clones for complex tasks. The paper split cleanly in two. He spent the next weeks in a secluded corner of Training Ground 3, a stack of leaves in his hand. The goal was to slice a leaf in two with only his chakra. It was an exercise in finesse, not power. For days, he accomplished nothing. His massive chakra reserves were a hindrance, shredding the leaves to pulp or simply blowing them away. But the system provided a feedback loop that no ordinary ninja possessed. Wind Chakra Infusion LVL-1 has been created. Your chakra is too dense. Refine the output. Failure. Try focusing on a single point on the leaf. Failure. Visualize a blade, not a blunt force. He used hundreds of shadow clones, each one practicing on a single leaf, their experiences feeding back to him when they dispelled. He was a one-man army of research and development. On the fifth day, a single leaf, held by a single clone, split perfectly down the middle. Quest completed. Master Your Nature, Stage 1. You have successfully performed basic wind release. Rewards. 10,000 EXP, new skill tree unlocked, wind release. Next objective. Create a unique wind release jutsu. A triumphant grin spread across his face. This was real power, not borrowed from a demon, but built with his own ingenuity and hard work. As he was packing up for the day, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Shish. A Nobi in a blank white mask and a black cloak stood on a branch 20 yards away. They wore the uniform of the Anbu Black Ops, but something felt wrong. Their chakra signature, though suppressed, felt cold and empty, devoid of emotion. A root ninja. The ninja made no hostile move. They simply held out a plain, unadorned scroll, dropped it to the ground, and then vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto approached cautiously. He scanned the scroll for traps, for seals, for poison. Nothing. He unrolled it. The message was written in stark, black ink. The beast you hold is a threat to the stability of Konoha. Your bonds make you unpredictable. Your influence makes you a danger. The elders of the leaf are watching. Do not force their hand. It was an anonymous threat, a ghost's warning. But it was a mistake. They had left something behind. Naruto focused, channeling his chakra into his eyes, activating his observe skill at its highest level. The scroll itself was normal, but on the ink, on the very fibers of the paper, there was a faint, lingering trace of a unique chakra signature he had encountered once before. In the mind of Mizuki, residual chakra signature detected. Danzo Shimura. He had a name. The shadow that had been manipulating events from the beginning now had a face. The threat wasn't some abstract council of elders. It was one man, Danzo. A cold calm settled over Naruto. This wasn't a game of jutsu or taijutsu. This was politics, a battle of influence and will. And it was a battle he had no intention of losing. Weeks turned into a month. Team 7 fell into a rhythm. They completed mission after mission, their efficiency and teamwork becoming the talk of the Chunin Corps. They moved like a single entity, with Naruto's adaptable strategies, Sasuke's precise, lethal attacks, and Sakura's ever-growing repertoire of support and medical skills. They were no longer just promising rookies. They were a force to be reckoned with. One morning, Kakashi gathered them on their usual training bridge. His expression was serious. "I have a recommendation from the Hokage," he said, pulling out 3 application forms. "I've nominated you for the Chunin selection exams." Sakura gasped. Sasuke's eyes lit up with a fierce, competitive fire. The Chunin exams were a proving ground, a chance to face powerful opponents from all over the world. It was the next step. "It won't be easy," Kakashi warned. "You'll be facing the best genin from every village. Some of them will have far more experience than you. But I believe you are ready." As they walked towards the academy to register, a sense of destiny seemed to settle over them. This was the moment their lives would change, the moment they would step out of the shadow of their sensei and onto the world stage. They were not the only ones with that idea. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a trio of ninja who radiated an aura of danger that was utterly alien to the peaceful streets of Konoha. They wore the headbands of the village hidden in the sand. One was a boy with purple face paint and a large, bandaged bundle on his back. The other was a blonde girl with 4 pigtails and a giant fan. But Chi was the third one who made Naruto stop dead in his tracks. He was short, with red hair and dark rings around his eyes that spoke of a profound and terrifying insomnia. He carried a massive gourd on his back, and the air around him was cold, filled with a low, whispering hiss that sounded like shifting sand. But it was his eyes that held Naruto captive. They were a pale, chilling seafoam green, and they were utterly devoid of any emotion save for a deep, bottomless loneliness and a burning, homicidal intent. Naruto's observe skill activated, and the information it returned made his blood run cold. Name: Gaara of the Sand. Level: ? Title: Jinchuriki of the One-Tail Shukaku, Commander of the Sand. Disposition: unstable, homicidal, lonely. Thoughts: so many people, so much life. Mother craves their blood. Their screams will be proof of my existence. I will kill them all. Jinchuriki. The word screamed in Naruto's mind. This boy, this walking personification of bloodlust and pain, was the same as him. He was a cage for a demon. But where Naruto had found bonds, Gaara had found only isolation. Where Naruto had learned to protect, Gaara had learned only to kill. He was a vision of Naruto could have become if he had succumbed to the hatred, if he had never met Iruka, or Kakashi, or his team. He wasn't looking at an enemy. He was looking in a mirror, a dark, cracked reflection of his deepest fears. The boy, Gaara, turned his dead, empty eyes on Naruto's team. He focused on Sasuke, a flicker of interest in his gaze. Then his eyes met Naruto's. For a single, terrifying second, their shared status as Jinchuriki seemed to arc between them, an unspoken, unholy acknowledgement. Gaara's lips peeled back in a smile that was not a smile at all. It was the baring of a predator's teeth. The carefree days of being a genin were over. They had parted ways with their innocence on the bridge in the Wave Country. Now, they were stepping into an arena, and a storm was coming. A storm of politics, of rivalries, and of demons, both the ones sealed inside them and the ones they were about to face. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Chunin Exams, a new game. The atmosphere in the academy classroom was a familiar one. Yet it was warped into something tense and hostile. These were not the familiar faces of his childhood classmates. This was a room packed with the genin elite from a half-dozen hidden villages. Each one radiating a unique blend of arrogance, anxiety, and killing intent. It was a Shark Tank, and Team 7 had just been thrown in. Naruto's eyes scanned the room, his gamer's mind processing the data. He saw the Sand siblings, with Gaara standing in a corner, his arms crossed, emanating a cold, murderous aura that made the other genin give him a wide berth. He saw the Sound Ninja. Their expressions twisted into smug, confident smirks. He saw the stoic Waterfall Nin, the proud Cloud Nin, and dozens of others, all sizing each other up, looking for weakness. Then, the door slammed open and a man covered in old scars, a sadistic grin etched on his face, strode into the room, flanked by a dozen stern-faced Chunin. The pressure in the room immediately intensified. Naruto activated Observe. Name: Ibiki Morino. Level: Title: Commander of the Konoha Torture and Interrogation Force. Disposition: analytical, sadistic, watchful. Thoughts. A promising batch this year. Lots of pride. Let's see how well that pride holds up when their minds start to break. The goal isn't to test their knowledge. It's to test their nerve and their ability to gather intelligence under pressure. Let the games begin. The pieces clicked into place. The test wasn't about what you knew. It was about what you could find out. Cheating wasn't just allowed, it was the entire point. They were assigned seats, deliberately separating teammates. Naruto found himself between the kunoichi from the grass village who had been attacked by the giant leech and Kiba, who was already sweating nervously. Akamaru whining softly from inside his jacket. The test papers were distributed. 10 questions, each one more ridiculously obscure and complex than the last. They were questions a seasoned Junin might struggle with, let alone a genin. It was a confirmation of his theory. Panic began to set in across the room as students stared at the impossible questions. The first Chunin proctor called out, "Candidate number 23, fail. You've been caught cheating 5 times. The genin was dragged out, kicking and screaming. The psychological pressure mounted. This was Ibiki's game. Naruto looked around. He saw an Aburame using his insects to read another paper. He saw a sand nin using a floating third eye made of sand. He saw Ino use her mind transfer jutsu on Sakura, who had, of course, solved all the problems with her prodigious intellect. Sasuke had activated his Sharingan, not to copy jutsu, but to copy the pencil movements of the student in front of him. They were all using their unique skills. It was his turn. Old Naruto would have panicked or turned in a blank sheet. New Naruto saw a puzzle to be solved. He needed a method that was unique, undetectable, and worthy of his skills. He brought his hands together under the desk. He molded a minuscule amount of chakra, a thread so fine it was almost imperceptible. Skill activated. Shadow clone jutsu micro. A single clone, no bigger than his thumb, formed in his palm, but he didn't stop there. He continued to mold its form, shrinking it, compressing it, until it was the size of a common housefly. It was an act of chakra control so precise that even Sakura would have been impressed. The tiny clone buzzed silently into the air. He then channeled a wisp of wind-natured chakra, creating a faint, invisible current to guide the clone. It was like piloting a drone in a hostile environment. The clone fly zipped through the air, completely unnoticed amidst the tension and the scratching of pencils. It landed on the paper of one of the sand ninja, its microscopic eyes scanning the answers. It took off again, landing on the paper of a cloud ninja who was writing with quiet confidence. After gathering data from 3 different sources, the clone flew back, landing on Naruto's test paper and dispelling in a puff of chakra so small it was indistinguishable from a dust mote. The information flooded his mind. He calmly picked up his pencil and began to write. But he wasn't done. His team needed to pass with him. He created another fly clone. This one flew to Sasuke's desk, landed on the back of his neck, and gave him a single sharp tap. A prearranged signal that meant I have it, just write what I write. Sasuke's pencil movements, which had been mimicking another student, paused for a fraction of a second before continuing, now with a new, confident flow. A third clone flew to Sakura's desk. It didn't need to give her the answers. It simply landed a small, tightly folded piece of paper, a note he had written earlier, that read, "Relax. I've got this handled. Act natural." He knew Sakura would pass on her own, but he also knew her anxiety. This was an act of reassurance, of leadership. Minutes ticked by. More and more students were disqualified. The room was a pressure cooker. Finally, Ibiki called time. "And now," the proctor said, his voice dropping, for the 10th and final question. He explained the rules. They could choose not to answer. If they did, they and their team would fail, but could try again next year. If they chose to answer and got it wrong, they would be barred from ever taking the Chunin exams again. A wave of fear washed over the room. It was a brutal, career-ending choice. Doubt crept into every face. One student, then another, raised their hands and quit, taking their teams with them. The numbers in the room began to dwindle. Naruto watched them go, his mind calm. This was the true test. The final filter. It wasn't about knowledge. It was about resolve. It was a question with no right answer. Only a right attitude. He saw the fear in Kiba's eyes, the doubt on Sakura's face. He knew what he had to do. He slammed his hand down on his desk, the loud crack making everyone jump. "Don't underestimate me," he yelled, his voice ringing with a powerful, unshakable confidence. He stood up, pointing a finger at Ibiki. "I don't care if I'm stuck as a genin for the rest of my life. I'm not afraid. I'm going to be Hokage someday, and a little trick question like this isn't going to make me run away." His words, amplified by his "the one who connects hearts" title, were not the ramblings of an idiot. They were a declaration of war against the fear that Ibiki had so carefully cultivated. He wasn't just speaking for himself. He was speaking for everyone in the room who was on the verge of giving up. He saw the dispositions of the genin around him shift in his observe window, from terrified, to hesitant, then to inspired. A girl from the waterfall village, who had been about to raise her hand, slowly lowered it. Hiba straightened up, a determined grin on his face. Shikamaru, who had looked bored, actually cracked a small smile. Ibiki stared at Naruto, his scarred face unreadable. Then, a slow, genuine smile spread across his lips. "Your time is up," Ibiki said. "And for those of you who remained, you've passed the first test." A collective gasp went through the room. Ibiki explained the true purpose of the exam, confirming everything Naruto had deduced. As he finished, the window behind him shattered, and a woman with wild purple hair and a trench coat made a dramatic entrance, unfurling a banner behind her. "All right, you maggots, listen up. I'm Anko Mitarashi, your proctor for the second exam. And I don't plan on half of you finishing. Follow me." Naruto used observe as she spoke. Name: Anko Mitarashi. Level: Title: Tokubetsu Junin, former apprentice of Orochimaru. Disposition: wild, traumatized, watchful. Sub-status: Cursed Seal of Heaven inactive. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place with terrifying speed. Mizuki worked for Danzo. The Anbu who threatened him worked for Danzo. And Anko, the next proctor, was a former student of Orochimaru. The man who had attacked them in the Land of Waves. This wasn't a simple exam. It was a political minefield, and he was walking right into the middle of it. The Forest of Death was aptly named. It was a dark, primordial place, a sprawling, untamed jungle sealed behind a massive, circular fence. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, rot, and the subtle, metallic tang of old blood. Anko's speech about the forest being their personal hunting ground, and them the prey, did little to lighten the mood. Team 7 received their scroll. Heaven. They needed an earth scroll to pass. "The moment we get in there, we're going to be hunted," Naruto said in a low voice as they waited for the gates to open. He was already in command mode. "Everyone is an enemy. We trust no one. We move fast. We find a water source, and we set up a defensive perimeter. I'll use clones for recon. We don't go looking for a fight. We let the fight come to us, on our terms." Sasuke nodded, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. Sakura, though nervous, squared her shoulders with a new determination. They had a plan. They had a leader. The gates opened, and they shot into the forest. Within an hour, they found a small river. It was a defensible position, with a large, ancient tree providing cover. Naruto created 50 shadow clones and sent them fanning out in every direction. "Report back with any team sightings. Do not engage. Observe and report." While they waited, Sakura set up a series of intricate tripwire traps around their position, her theoretical knowledge finally finding a practical, deadly application. Sasuke perched on a high branch, his Sharingan active, a silent, watchful sentinel. A clone dispelled, and its memory flooded Naruto's mind. 3 grass ninja, 1 kilometer to the east. Moving slow. Seem wounded. Wounded prey was tempting, but it could also be a trap. Before he could formulate a plan, the ground beneath them erupted. A monstrous, house-sized snake burst from the earth, its jaws wide enough to swallow them whole. It lunged not at Naruto or Sasuke, but at Sakura. Naruto moved without thinking, shoving her out of the way and taking the brunt of the snake's impact himself. The blow sending him flying into a tree. -150 HP. Sasuke was a blur, his hand crackling with an unstable, miniature version of the Chidori. He drove the lightning into the snake's eye. The beast shrieked, a sound that was half hiss, half thunder, and recoiled, thrashing wildly. A figure dropped from the trees, landing with an unnerving, boneless grace. It was the grass ninja the clone had spotted. Their face was pale, their eyes a reptilian gold, and their tongue flickered out, long and serpentine, to lick a drop of blood from their lips. My, the figure hissed. Their voice an androgynous rasp that sent a chill down Naruto's spine. The Sharingan, and the little fox. What a delightful surprise. Naruto's observe skill activated, and the result was a blaring, system-wide alarm. Name: Orochimaru. Level: Title: The Serpent Sannin, Konoha traitor, leader of the Sound Village. Disposition: predatory, obsessive, Sasuke Uchiha, malicious. Thoughts: excellent. The Uchiha is even more promising up close. His body will make a perfect vessel. But that Jinchuriki, his chakra is potent. Unrefined, but powerful. He could be a problem. I'll mark the Uchiha first, then dispose of the other two. The killing intent that flooded the clearing was a physical force, a suffocating blanket of pure malice that made Zabuzaz feel like a child's tantrum. Sakura was frozen solid, her face pale with terror. Sasuke was trembling, not with fear, but with a mixture of rage and the instinctual terror of a prey animal facing an apex predator. Sasuke, Sakura, run! Naruto yelled, creating 100 clones that charged the Sannin. You can't fight him. Orochimaru just smiled. He moved through the clones as if they were standing still, his movements fluid and unnatural. He dispatched them with casual, contemptuous strikes, each one a killing blow. In seconds, all the clones were gone. He appeared in front of Sasuke. Naruto knew he had only one chance. He couldn't match Orochimaru's power. But he could try to outsmart him. He remembered his wind training, the image of the leaf splitting in two. He couldn't form a proper jutsu yet, but he could shape the raw element. He created another 200 clones. They didn't charge. They stood in a wide circle around Orochimaru, and on Naruto's mental command, they all performed the leaf slicing exercise at once. They didn't aim at a target. They aimed at the air itself, focusing their wind chakra into thousands of tiny, invisible, razor-sharp blades. Due to extreme duress and creative application of chakra nature, a new skill has been created. Skill created. Wind style. Rasengan, Stage O, Blade of Wind. The air in the clearing became a chaotic maelstrom of slicing wind. It wasn't a coherent attack, but a devastatingly effective area of denial assault. Trees were shredded, the ground scored with 1,000 cuts. It wasn't enough to seriously injure Orochimaru, but it was enough to surprise him. The Sannin was forced to leap back, a dozen small cuts appearing on his cloak. How interesting, Orochimaru hissed, a flicker of genuine curiosity in his reptilian eyes. A raw, unformed nature transformation. You were full of surprises, little fox. But the distraction had cost them dearly. Orochimaru used the momentary opening to appear behind Sasuke. His neck stretched to an impossible length, and his fangs sank into Sasuke's shoulder. Sasuke let out a scream of pure, unadulterated agony that was cut short as he collapsed, unconscious. A black, three-tomo pattern spread from the wound, a mark of pure, corrupting evil. Consider that a gift, Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru whispered. He turned his attention back to Naruto and the terrified Sakura. Now, for the cleanup. Before he could move, he clutched his face, his body convulsing. TCH. This body, the rejection is starting. It seems I'm out of time. He gave Naruto one last, cold smile. We will meet again. And with that, he melted into the trunk of a tree and was gone. Silence descended. Sakura was still frozen, tears streaming down her face. Naruto rushed to Sasuke's side. The cursed seal was a malevolent, pulsing brand, radiating a chakra so dark it felt like it was drinking the light from the air. Naruto's mind was a whirlwind. Their sensei was gone. An S-rank enemy had just branded his rival with a dark power and left them for dead. They were injured, exposed, and still needed an earth scroll. He had to take command. He slapped Sakura across the face. Not hard, but sharp enough to break her out of her fear-induced paralysis. Get it together, Sakura. He commanded, his voice harsh but steady. Sasuke is down. I need you. Are you a kunoichi of the leaf or not? She blinked, the shock of the slap and the sting of his words clearing her head. She nodded, wiping her tears, her expression hardening. What do? We get out of here. Now, he said. He looked at Sasuke's unconscious form. They couldn't carry him and fight. They were too vulnerable. He needed to end this exam, and he needed to do it immediately. He stood up, took a deep breath, and poured every ounce of his massive chakra reserve into a single jutsu. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. The forest exploded. Not with 100 clones, not with 200. 1,000 Narutos filled the clearing, a veritable army of orange. The sheer chakra presence was enough to make the very trees tremble. He pointed a finger outwards, at the vast, dark expanse of the forest. Find a team. The original Naruto roared, his voice amplified by 1,000 others. Find an earth scroll. Do not fail. Go. The army surged outwards, a tidal wave of clones that crashed through the forest in every direction. It was a strategy of overwhelming, brute force. No team of genin, no matter how skilled, could stand against 1,000 opponents at once. They didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, a single clone returned, bruised but triumphant, an earth scroll held in its hand. It had taken a squad of 100 clones to overwhelm a team of rain ninja, who had dropped their scroll and fled in terror. Naruto didn't hesitate. He had Sakura help him get Sasuke onto his back. He looked at the massive, ominous tower in the distance. Let's go, he said. Let's finish this. They were the first team to arrive at the central tower, hours ahead of schedule, battered, traumatized, but alive. Iruka was waiting for them in the central chamber, and his jaw dropped when he saw their condition. Naruto laid Sasuke down gently, his eyes never leaving the cursed seal. They had passed the second test. But he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the real exam, the battle for his rival's soul, had just begun. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The God Among Men. The silence of the tower was a stark contrast to the chaos of the forest. It was a cold, sterile quiet, broken only by Sakura's ragged, panicked breaths and the low, guttural hum of the black markings on Sasuke's neck. The cursed seal was a living thing, a cancerous tattoo of pure malice that seemed to writhe beneath the skin, pulsing with a dark, alien chakra that made Naruto's own demonic tenon. She feel like a sleeping kitten in comparison. Sakura's hands hovered over the seal, glowing with a faint green medical chakra. But the moment her energy touched the markings, they flared violently, pushing her back. I can't. His own chakra is fighting it, but this dark energy, it's like a poison. It's consuming him. Naruto knelt, his hand resting on Sasuke's forehead. The Uchiha was burning with fever. His body caught in a war he wasn't even conscious enough to fight. Naruto used observe and the information was a grim diagnosis. Name: Sasuke Uchiha. Level: 6. Title: Last of the Uchiha, Konoha Genin. Status: Unconscious, Critical. Active debuff. Cursed Seal of Heaven, Stage 1, siphons user's chakra to fuel a parasitic dark energy. Causes extreme pain and aggression. Blocks normal chakra flow. The user's will. Corrupts the user's will. That was the true purpose. It wasn't just a power-up, it was a leash. A method of control. Just then, a swirl of leaves heralded the arrival of Kakashi. His single eye took in the scene in an instant. Naruto, battered but standing. Sakura, exhausted and terrified. Sasuke, unconscious and marked. His usual lazy demeanor vanished, replaced by an aura of cold, lethal fury. Orochimaru. Kakashi breathed, the name a curse. He knelt, his hand glowing with a faint white chakra as he examined the seal. I'll try to suppress it. But this is a powerful and complex curse. It will take time. As he worked, a squad of medics arrived, alerted by Iruka. They moved to put Sasuke on a stretcher, but before they could, a new figure appeared at the edge of the chamber. It was a grass ninja, the proctor for one of the other teams. They had long, dark hair and an unsettlingly placid smile. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The chakra signature was a perfect match for the one he'd observed in the forest. It was him. My, what a terrible misfortune, the grass nin said, their voice the same androgynous rasp. It seems the forest of death was too much for the Uchiha prodigy. Perhaps he should be disqualified for his own safety. Kakashi didn't even look up from his work on Sasuke. Get out of here, Orochimaru. Your business in this village is finished. The grass nin's smile widened. their face beginning to literally melt and reform, shifting back into the pale, serpentine features of the Sannin. So you knew. Clever Kakashi. But you are mistaken. My business here is just beginning. He looked at Sasuke's prone form with a hungry, possessive light in his golden eyes. I have planted my seed. Now, I will simply wait for it to bloom. He turned to Naruto, his gaze lingering. And you, little fox. That wind of yours, it was quite something. I look forward to seeing how you grow. If you survive, that is. And with a final, mocking chuckle, he sank into the floor, leaving behind only the cold dread of his presence. The preliminary rounds were held a week later, in a large, arena-like chamber within the tower. The mood was electric. The genin who had survived the forest were a harder, more dangerous-looking group than the one that had started. Sasuke was there, standing with his team, his face pale but his eyes burning with a cold, new intensity. Kakashi had managed to temporarily suppress the seal with a complex sealing formula, but the dark markings were still visible, a grim promise of a future conflict. The first match was announced. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato, a Konoha genin with the ability to absorb chakra on contact. The fight was brutal and short. Yoroi was a direct counter to a close combat specialist like Sasuke. Every time Sasuke tried to use taijutsu, Yoroi would drain his energy, leaving him gasping and weak. The cursed seal pulsed, and Sasuke cried out, clutching his neck as the dark power tried to erupt. Naruto watched, his fists clenched. He could see Sasuke's frustration, his humiliation. He was being beaten not by a superior opponent, but by his own damaged body. But then, something shifted. Sasuke took a deep breath, his Sharingan spinning to life. He remembered Kakashi's words during the suppression ritual. This power feeds on your hatred and your desire for strength. Starve it. Fight with what is yours, not with what it offers. Instead of charging in again, Sasuke used a technique he had copied from Rock Lee during their brief encounter before the exams, the Lion's Barrage. It was a pure taijutsu combo, executed with a desperate, flawless precision. He was faster, stronger. He didn't give Yoroi a chance to absorb anything, overwhelming him with a storm of kicks that ended with a final, decisive blow to the jaw. Knocking him out cold, Sasuke stood over his opponent, panting, his body trembling with the effort. He had won, but it had cost him. He had won with his own skill, not the borrowed power of the curse. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. The matches continued. Shino Aburame defeated his opponent with terrifying, silent efficiency. Konkuro of the Sand defeated his opponent with his strange, bandaged puppet. The fights were a showcase of the diverse and deadly skills the other villages possessed. Then came Sakura's match, Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka, a battle of former best friends. The fight began as a standard, if somewhat clumsy, taijutsu exchange. But then, it became a battle of wills. Ino, using her clan's mind transfer jutsu, successfully took over Sakura's body. For a moment, it seemed over. Sakura stood still, a vacant look on her face, as Ino forced her to raise her hand to forfeit. But then, Sakura's hand stopped. Her body trembled. Get it together, Sakura. Are you a kunoichi of the leaf or not? Naruto's words from the forest echoed in her mind. She thought of how useless she had felt, cowering while he and Sasuke fought for their lives. She thought of her vow to get stronger, to stand beside them, not behind them. From the stands, Naruto leaned forward. Don't you dare give up, Sakura. You're stronger than she is. Fight back. His voice, infused with the power of his charisma, cut through the haze of Ino's jutsu. Inside her own mind, Sakura heard another voice. An angrier, more determined version of herself. Inner Sakura, get out of my head. Billboard brow. With a scream of pure, concentrated willpower, Sakura forced Ino's consciousness out of her mind. The backlash sent both girls stumbling. They charged at each other for one final, desperate punch, their fists connecting in a brutal double knockout. The match was a draw. But as she lay on the ground, a proud, weary smile touched Sakura's lips. She hadn't won, but she hadn't lost. She had fought back. She had found her own strength. The next few matches were a blur. Then, the screen flashed with two new names, Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka. Kiba grinned, a feral, confident expression. Looks like I got the lucky draw. This'll be over in a second, Akamaru. The small dog on his head barked in agreement. The other genin murmured amongst themselves. They still saw Naruto as the dead last, the loudmouth who had gotten lucky. They expected this to be a quick, brutal end to his Chunin exam run. Naruto just smiled. He walked down to the arena floor, his steps calm and measured. He had spent the last week not resting, but training, using his clones to analyze every fighter he had seen so far, including Kiba. The match began. Kiba was a whirlwind of motion. A beast-like taijutsu user moving in perfect sync with Akamaru. He was fast, ferocious, and unpredictable. He landed a solid blow that sent Naruto skidding across the floor. "See, what did I tell ya? Too easy," Kiba gloated. The Naruto he had hit dispelled in a puff of smoke. "A shadow clone. You're fast, Kiba," the real Naruto's voice called out from behind him. "But you rely on your nose too much." Before Kiba could turn, Naruto made a single hand seal. Blade of Wind. He didn't try to cut Kiba. He simply released a sharp, concentrated burst of unscented wind chakra right in front of Kiba's face. It was harmless, but to Kiba's hypersensitive nose, it was like a flashbang grenade going off. Kiba roared in pain, clutching his nose, his sense of smell completely scrambled. Akamaru, similarly affected, yelped and leapt from his head, disoriented. The Inuzuka clan's greatest weapon had just been turned into their greatest weakness. "Now, we're even," Naruto said. He charged. It was no longer a game. His movements were crisp, efficient. He dismantled Kiba's frantic, wild attacks with precise blocks and parries, his body moving with the grace and power his new stats afforded him. He wasn't just a brawler anymore. He was a martial artist. He saw an opening, a flicker of weakness in Kiba's stance. He feinted high with a clone, and as Kiba reacted, the real Naruto dropped low, sweeping Kiba's legs out from under him. As Kiba fell, Naruto was already there, his fist connecting in a perfect, textbook uppercut that snapped Kiba's head back. Uzumaki Barrage. It wasn't a named technique in the system, but he thought it anyway. It was his own version of Sasuke's Lion's Barrage. Kiba landed in a crumpled heap, unconscious. Silence. The entire arena, from the genin to the Junin proctors, stared in stunned disbelief. It hadn't just been a victory. It had been a tactical dismantling. He had identified his opponent's weakness, exploited it, and then defeated him with superior skill. The dead last was gone. In his place was a calm, competent, and terrifyingly powerful shinobi. Then, a single person started to clap. It was Shikamaru. Then Choji joined in. Then Sakura. Soon, the entire group of Konoha genin was applauding. They had just witnessed the birth of a new contender. Two of the most anticipated matches followed. Neji Hyuga, the stoic prodigy, brutally defeated his cousin Hinata. His words about fate and the weakness of the branch family cutting deeper than any physical blow. Naruto had to be held back by Rock Lee, his voice roaring through the arena. As he swore he would defeat Neji for her. It was a public declaration, a promise that resonated with everyone who heard it. Then came the final, terrifying match of the preliminaries, Gaara of the Sand versus Rock Lee. It was a battle that defied belief. Lee, shedding the leg weights that were revealed to weigh hundreds of pounds, became a green blur of pure, unadulterated speed. He was a taijutsu master of the highest caliber. But he was fighting a monster. Gaara didn't move. His sand, flowing from his gourd, moved for him, creating a perfect, impenetrable shield that blocked every one of Lee's superhuman attacks. Naruto's observed skill struggled to quantify what it was seeing. Target. Gaara. Skill. Absolute defense. Description. An automated shield of chakra-infused sand linked directly to the user's subconscious. Defense is instantaneous and does not require conscious thought. It was a perfect defense. But Lee, with the encouragement of his sensei, Might Guy, found a way to break it. He opened the inner gates. A forbidden technique that granted a user godlike power at the cost of destroying their own body. He became a comet of pure force, his speed so great that it finally overwhelmed the sand. He landed a devastating series of blows, but it wasn't enough. In a final, desperate act, his body already tearing itself apart, Lee used his ultimate technique, the primary lotus. But Gaara survived, and as Lee lay helpless on the ground, his power spent, Gaara's sand moved in, not just to block, but to crush. It crushed Lee's arm. It crushed his leg. The sound of snapping bone echoed in the silent arena. It was a horrifying, merciless display. If Might Guy hadn't intervened, Gaara would have killed him. Gaara stood there, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and bloodlust. As the medics carried Lee's broken body away, he had won, but the look on his face was not one of triumph. It was the look of a child who had just broken his favorite toy and didn't understand why it wasn't fun anymore. The preliminaries were over. The finalists were announced, the matchups for the third and final exam displayed on the large screen. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Gaara of the Sand. Naruto Uzumaki vs. Neji Hyuga. The stakes had been raised to an impossible height. You can't win. Kakashi's words were blunt. He, Naruto, and Sasuke stood in the hospital room where Lee was recovering. Gaara is a monster. Even in your best condition, Sasuke, it would be a dangerous fight. With the cursed seal, it's suicide. So I should just give up. Sasuke snarled, his pride wounded. No, Kakashi said, you're going to train. I'm going to teach you how to master the Chidori, and how to use your Sharingan to its full potential. We have 1 month. I will personally oversee your training, away from the village, where we won't be watched. He was sealing Sasuke away, not just to train him, but to protect him from Orochimaru's influence. And from Danzo's. After Kakashi and Sasuke left, Naruto stayed behind. He had his own problem. He had promised to defeat Neji, but Neji was a prodigy of the Hyuga clan, a master of the gentle fist. His clones and brawling style wouldn't be enough. He needed a teacher. A real one. His mind flashed back to the battle on the bridge. To Kakashi's Chidori. The power, the focus. He needed something like that. Something that was his own. He spent the next 2 days searching. He asked Iruka. He asked the Hokage. But all the elite Junin were busy training the other finalists. He was on his own. Frustrated, he decided to clear his head with a walk. His path took him to the hot springs. And that's where he found him. A tall, white-haired man with red lines on his face, perched precariously on top of the women's bathhouse, a notebook and pen in hand, giggling perversely. Naruto's first instinct was to call him out. But then he used observe. The result made his system lag for a full second. Name: Jiraiya. Level: Title: The Toad Sage, Legendary Sannin, Spymaster. Disposition: Perverted, Goofy, Legendary. Thoughts: Ah, the afternoon light is perfect. The subtle curves, the elegant lines, this is the stuff of artistic genius. The 5th Hokage selection is such a drag. Research is much more important. A Sannin, one of the 3 legendary ninja of Konoha, on par with Orochimaru. He was here, acting like a common fool. This was his chance. Naruto didn't shout. He didn't get angry. He walked to the base of the wall, looked up, and spoke in a clear, calm voice. Jiraiya-sama, he said, his use of the formal honorific making the Sannin almost fall off his perch in surprise. I know who you are. And I know you were the sensei of the 4th Hokage. Jiraiya's goofy expression vanished, replaced by a sharp, assessing gaze. You've got a big mouth, kid. Who told you that? The Hokage did. Naruto lied smoothly, his charisma stat turning the blatant falsehood into a plausible statement. He also told me that my father, Minato Namikaze, wanted you to be my guardian. He said you were the only one who could teach me to control the power inside me. The power of the 9 tails. He had just laid all his cards on the table. The name of his father. His status as a Jinchuriki. He had tied it all together with a direct appeal to the Sannin's legacy and his connection to the 4th Hokage. It was a calculated, brilliant gamble. Jiraiya was silent for a long, long time. He hopped down from the wall, his entire demeanor changed. The pervert was gone. In his place was a man of immense power and gravity. He looked at Naruto, at the boy who wore his student's face. And he saw the legacy he had shirked for 12 years. So, Hiruzen-sensei finally spilled the beans, Jiraiya sighed, running a hand through his wild white hair. What is it you want from me, kid? I have 1 month to defeat a prodigy who believes in a cruel fate, Naruto said, his voice ringing with determination. And I have a lifetime to master a demon. I need a teacher. I need you to teach me how to be strong enough to protect everyone. Teach me what you taught my father. Jiraiya looked at the boy's blazing blue eyes, at the unshakable will that was a perfect echo of Minato's. He saw the future of the village standing right in front of him. A faint smile touched his lips. All right, kid, you've got a deal, but it's not going to be easy. I'm going to work you until you break. We start now. Quote, as Naruto walked away with the legendary Sannin, his new sensei, he felt a profound shift in his own destiny. He was no longer just a boy playing a game, leveling up his skills. He was now a student of legends, a wielder of burgeoning power, and a symbol of hope. The day of the finals arrived. The stadium was a colossal structure, packed with tens of thousands of cheering spectators from all over the world. The energy was a palpable, roaring wave. Naruto stood in the waiting area, looking out at the massive arena. He was dressed in a new black and orange outfit, a gift from Jiraiya. He felt calm, centered. He looked up at the cage box, where the third Hokage sat beside the cage of the sand, who Naruto's observed skill identified with a sickening lurch as Orochimaru in disguise. The invasion was coming. The entire exam was a Trojan horse. He looked at the stands, at the faces of his friends. He saw Sakura, Hinata, Shikamaru, all looking down at him with expressions of hope and belief. He thought of Sasuke, preparing for his own battle against a demon. He thought of Neji, waiting in the arena, a prisoner of his own philosophy. He was no longer Naruto Uzumaki, the demon brat. He was Naruto Uzumaki, a finalist in the Chunin exams, a student of the Toad Sage, a shinobi of the Leaf. The crowd roared his name. They had seen his victory in the preliminaries. They had heard the stories of the great Naruto Bridge. He was no longer an outcast. He was a hero. The announcer's voice boomed over the stadium. Will the first two contestants please make their way to the arena floor? Naruto Uzumaki versus Neji Hyuga. Naruto took a deep breath. The system was humming, his stats were higher than ever, and a roster of new, powerful jutsu was at his command. This wasn't just a fight for promotion. It was a battle for a friend's soul, for the future of the village, for the very definition of destiny. He was no longer just a player in the game of life. He was ready to change the rules. He was ready to become a god among men. Chapter 10 End.